City Council meeting for January 22nd, 2008 to order. First thing on the agenda is always the roll call and determination of the quorum. Jackie, please.
McCroy? Johnson?
Here.
Adcock? Here. Hurlbut?
Here.
Okrepke? Chapman?
Here.
Weifenbach?
Here.
Olson? Here. Kroger?
Here.
Quaker?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, everyone. Just a couple notes. If you have a cell phone or a pager, if you would please turn that off at this time. The rule in this chamber is if your cell phone or your pager goes off during the meeting, you'll be buying donuts next week. And that could get a little bit expensive. Also, if you are wishing to talk about any item on the agenda, there are speaker request forms. They look like this. They'll be on the table over here to your left. If you would please fill that out, put your name, address, and also the agenda number of the item you wish to talk to. That way we can make sure that we don't overlook you as we go through the process. With that, if I could have everyone please stand for the invocation. We have Pastor Rich Wells from South Canyon Baptist Church, and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't see Mr. Wells here.
I believe I'm supposed to do it, Mr.
Are you
Mayor.
doing it? Please. Introduce yourself, please.
I'm Pastor Julie Norwood from Canyon Lake Church of God. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come before you tonight, and we're so grateful for all the blessings and the provisions that you continuously bestow upon us. Father, we thank you for the meeting tonight. We ask, oh God, that your counsel would be in this room. Father, we ask as those that are here would serve this country with integrity, this city, with integrity and pureness of heart, God, that your will would be done for all the people that live in this city. We love you, Lord, and we honor you tonight by standing. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. God bless you.
Thank you, everyone. The next thing on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. I do have a number of different items we do need to add. Let's see, I would like to add an item 71C, which is a travel request for the Municipal League Day in Pierre. Let's start it this way. 71A would be a report under the mayor's items from Mason Short, our airport director. 71B is a resolution, and as a resolution in support of higher education facility in West River. 71C is the travel request, and that's for Municipal Day in Pierre. And then I also have a request for a 101B, which is to authorize the mayor and the finance officer to sign a waiver of right to protest. Are there any additions to the agenda in addition to that? Let's go to Alderman Karen Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to add an item under items from Alderman.
Okay. And the topic is, please.
The topic is public work, it's a water issue.
Okay. Water, and we will call that 71D, Water and Karen. Additional items. Malcolm Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to add an item 70A, just funding sources.
Very good. Any additional additions to the agenda? If not, the chair would look for motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion on that motion. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Chair would also look for motion to approve the minutes from the July 7th, 2008 City Council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Now is the time for awards and recognition, and first thing on the agenda is the Veteran of the Month for January 2008. Bob, if you want to come join me up here. There we go. You know, it's always great when we have the opportunity to honor one of our veterans. And in partnership with the Veterans Coordination Commission, we are pleased to present the January 2008 Veteran of the Month recognition to Robert Bob W. Kerner. Bob actually is originally from Illinois. He joined the Air Force in 1961. He went for basic training. He trained in jet engine mechanic training, and he continued that throughout his career in the Air Force. He served at various Air Force bases throughout the United States and overseas, including Thailand and Korea. Bob's last active duty assignment was at Ellsworth Air Force Base, and that's what brought him to the beautiful Black Hills, where he retired in December of 1983 with the rank of Master Sergeant. Bob's decoration includes the Air Force Condemnation Medal, Air Force Outstanding Unit Award, the Good Conduct Medal, the National Defense Service Medal, the Longevity Service Award, the Professional Military Education Graduate Ribbon, and the Small Arms Expert Marksmanship Ribbon. Boy, that's a bunch. After Bob's retirement, he was employed at Big A's Auto Parts, and he worked part-time at the base bowling alley from 1983 to 1994. And in 1990, he started working at the South Dakota Cement Plant, where he retired in May of 2007. He is a life member of the Retired Enlistment Association, and since his retirement, he has expressed an interest in working within that local organization. He is married since 1963. They have 2 daughters and 1 son. Bob is a dedicated family man and a patriotic individual who has served his country with honor and with pride and dedication. And so we are very pleased to present you with the Veterans of the Month for January 2008. Congratulations, Bob. Sometimes you can get them to the mic and sometimes you can't. Why don't we go ahead and, you have family here, why don't you go ahead and have them come up and we'll take a picture. You want to come over here, Bob? Jackie, you're going to do the honors? Very good. Okay, kids too, come on up, guys. Why don't we scoot down this way and then we'll go to the podium in our way. Come on down, you guys. Very good.
I'm one of your kids, boss.
Okay. One more camera? Yeah. Very good. Congratulations again, Bob. Thank you for your service.
How you doing?
Okay. We also are very privileged to honor 2 long-term employees of the City of Rapid City, Dwight Hall. Come on up, Dwight. And Chief, you want to come up and share a few words with Dwight? I know he's been with the city for about 19 years.
Dwight Hall was came to us 19 years ago as an accident investigator, became an accident reconstructionist, and was a very talented individual, but what always stood out most about him was his professionalism, his maturity, and he's the kind of employee that we'd like to have stay around another 20 or 25 years, but he's made the decision to retire, and we support him and we wish him the best.
I'd just like to say that I've enjoyed working with the police department. It's an excellent employer, and I want to thank the citizens of Rapid City and the city council and all the employees of the city for everything that they've done for me over the years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dwight. Mr. Preston, if you want to come up. We also have a 17-year veteran of the Rapid City Finance Office. If I could have Donna, you want to come up, please? Barry, do you want to come up too? Okay, very good. And we'll let Jim Preston, the City Finance Officer, share a few words about Donna Winter.
Thank you, Mayor. First thing I want to say about Donna is she is a very nice lady. She has worked for the city for 17 years. Her job responsibilities included the keeping track of all official records from the city charter to all contracts, et cetera, over the years. She also took care of all business licenses with the exception of liquor licenses for these 17 years. And she did all our bank deposits and stuff for us. So that was her job. She was just a super nice lady, great person to have on the front line, greeting all the public and stuff. Last thing I want to say is Donna's a very nice lady. And I do want to give her something from the finance department because she is such a special lady. There is a story behind these turtles, and there's a story behind why there's 2 boxes. But it'll just needless to say she likes turtles. And so on behalf of the finance department, Donna, you will be missed but not forgotten.
Thank you. I have the understanding that 1 box is for me and 1 box is to share. So I will share the box of turtles this evening. But I also want to thank the excellent, I've had excellent employers over the years, and the staff has just been so good to work with, and I'm just really grateful. And I'm enjoying myself, though, I have to say that. So thank you.
Very fun. Donna, why don't you come here for a picture? Come on, Barry. We got to give you some. Oh, better give her the award. Yeah. Why don't you come over here and come on up, Barry. Yes. Come on, Barry. Come on, scoot over a little bit, then we'll go. Get me in the picture there. Okay. Very good. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, too.
Well, these are all continuation items. I'm sure they did.
Thank you, everyone, and congratulations, Dwight, and yes, everybody now knows how nice of a person Donna is. Okay, very good. We are on to our general public comment period. This is a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the council on any issue not on the agenda. Action will not be taken at tonight's meeting on any issue not on the agenda, except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the city council members present. We do have a speaker request form from Mike Derby, 2735 Country Club Drive. And let's see, Mike, if you just want to come forward, identify yourself, and please keep in mind, everyone, we do have a 3-minute time limit for this period. Mr. Derby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. I'm Mike Derby, Rapid City. I'm here as owner of the Canyon Lake Resort, and with me is Michael Lees. He is the president of Black Hills Fly Fishers. I want to take this opportunity to put an item on the radar screen. I've been in contact with Public Works and Growth Management, so I'm not bringing up something that they're not aware of. But as you know, Canyon Lake needs to be dredged, and this is an item that needs to be taken care of in the near future, and the dam needs to be fixed. Part of that also is the diversion pipe that goes around when the lake is going to be drained. I've been in contact with Ron Koth from Game Fish and Parks, and as you know, there's monies available that have been set aside, but those monies will sunset if we don't get on with this project. Michael will talk about Black Hills Fly Fishers' role in dredging the lake and what that'll do. And then also, my understanding is there's some 2012 funds that have been set aside for this project. I know we're waiting for some federal dollars that have been that we're looking for an earmark, if that's the correct term, and I'm not sure how long we're going to wait for those. I do have a vested interest. Our property's on the lake. I want to see the lake dredged. I also am moving a project through the process, which will be a resort hotel next to the Chop House. So from my personal interest, I'd like to get this lake cleaned up, taken care of, fixed, prior to the opening of that in the spring of 2010. Michael, would you like to talk about your role with Black Hills Fly Fishers?
Very good. And we do have a speaker request form from Michael Lees.
Yes, sir.
And there again, I assume that you're same topic.
Exactly, yes. Thank you. First of all, we'd like to thank the 2012 process for this worthy project. Our goal is to get a better fishery below Canyon Lake through the addition of cold water, particularly in the summertime. And so we would encourage any activity that we could to get this project started. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And just for everyone's information, President of the Council, Malcolm Chapman, did identify, we do have $400,000 identified in the year 2007, so the funding is available currently.
Right.
Mr. Derby, did you have anything to add?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in closing, if it's appropriate to help jumpstart the project, there will be other items that we may look for a TIF for in that area, the Rapid Canyon Sanitary District. And if we could jumpstart this project, possibly creating a TIF with the development that's going to happen on that lake, which will be about $14 million in value, then maybe we can get started and not wait for the federal government. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Let's see, we do have a light from Deb Hadcock.
Mayor Hanks, I know the other day we had talked to Dirk and he had some information on this. And I know Malcolm talked about the 2012, but maybe Dirk has some more information on this to share with us today.
Okay, very good. We're going to keep this fairly short because this is actually, we're a little bit out of procedure here because this is a general public comment period. But Dirk, could you answer the question, please?
I will keep it short. Thank you, Mayor. Tried to get an update. I did get a request from through the email on the status of this project. I got the update today. There is $140,000 in the omnibus budget bill on the federal level. The president has not yet signed that. He is considering vetoing in that. There's a political posturing going on there, but it's expected that he will sign it. As soon as that is signed, the funding will be available, and then we will come to council and ask for authorization to submit an RFP for this project.
Very good. Thank you, everyone. Seeing no further speaker request forms during the public comment period, we will move on. Next thing on the agenda is the non-public hearing items. This is items 3 through 73, and the chair would look for a motion to open the public comment period for items 3 through 63, please.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Is there any public comment on items 3 through 63? We do not have any speaker request forms. Anyone that wishes to speak on any of the items 3 through 63? If not, the chair would look for a motion to close the public comment period.
So, second.
We have a motion and a second to close the public comment period. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. So we are on to the consent calendar items 3 through 63, and the chair would ask if any items need to be removed from the consent calendars, items 3 through 63. I do have items 35 and 48 to be removed. Any additional request? Let's go to Marcia Elkins, our Growth Management Director. 31, 32. Jason Green, City Attorney.
19, please.
19. Alderman Sam Quaker.
29 and 51, Mayor.
51. Very good. Any additional items to be removed from the consent calendar? Right now I have items 19, 29, 31, 32, 35, 48, and 51. Any additional items to be removed? If not, the chair would look for a motion for approval of the consent calendar, items 3 through 63 with the exception of 19, 29, 31, 32, 35, 48, 51.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We are on to item number 19, and that would be Deb Hadcock. Could you please read that in for us, please?
Number 19 is approval of travel request of Malcolm Chapman, Bill Okrepke, Tom Johnson, and Lloyd LaCroix to attend the 2008 Annual Congressional City Conference in Washington, D.C., March 8th through the 12th, 2008, in the approximate amount of $10,768.76, and I move approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Discussion on that motion. Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. The amount on the agenda is $12,859. I don't know if that was the intention of the motion maker.
There was a change on your, what do you call it?
There is a change in the link, and I believe there's also documentation in your blue binder. And Mr. Preston, do you have that dollar amount?
And that number again is $10,768.76.
Very good.
Sorry.
Alderman Quaker, you still have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. If I could just offer a follow-up, and it is not my intent to open up another extensive discussion on travel tonight, but I do believe that we need to have a discussion at some point in the near future regarding the overall number of trips taken. Of the four listed, Alderman Okrepke is the only one that hasn't been on a National League of Cities trip in the last the last year. So, you know, if the other three go on the trip, my recommendation is that we certainly look at a policy of having council members go on no more than one large trip, per year. I would note that the amount of this expenditure is more than $10,000. I believe that Sioux Falls' entire travel budget for their council is 16. I realize that there's maybe some other issues there that we need to explore, but I would agree with the mayor's comments that were made the other day that we need to take another look at our overall travel policy and our process. I think that it would be better to send just a couple of people to these trips, and certainly people who haven't been to, I don't think that people need to go to 2 trips a year. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Deb Hadcock.
Actually, Bill Krepke did go to Washington last year. And then I only say this once without causing a big issue either. If you want to change the amount, it should be changed at the budget and not taking it into an issue now. We'll be having budget sessions and working sessions, and then I think that would be the appropriate time if you want change to do it then. Instead of voting no on everything on the budget, maybe it's time we start saying what we think and changing some of this stuff instead of waiting until we run or make it into a political issue at our time of running. So some of these things I agree with Mr. Quaker, but I also think there's a time and a place for that, so it doesn't look like it's just doing it for other agendas. Thank you.
Okay. Just a reminder, the motion on the floor is for approval. I have given some leeway, and I'll continue to do that in all fairness to everybody else, but please, if you could try and limit your comments more specifically to the motion on the floor. Alderman Tom Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll try and be somewhat brief. Last year we went to D.C., and before that, one of the largest things we got out of that trip was we secured actually the water impact total for the community, which is vital to the community to grow. I don't think you could put a price tag on it. Certainly $10,000 wouldn't even come close. 100 times $10,000 wouldn't even do that. And I'd like to remind the council as well that we got nearly $10 million in federal earmarks to do the extension of East Anamosa Street and Mall Drive. These trips provide education, and they also turn around and pay huge dividends back to the community. So if you're stepping over $10,000 to miss 10,000, 10 million, 20 million, I think you're making a bad decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, we do have Alderman Sam Quaker's light on. Just, I'll ask the question as far as procedural. Does anyone wish to speak for, before Alderman Quaker speaks for a second time? If not, we will go back to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of follow-up comments. I've been very consistent in my position on this, and I did raise the concerns at the budget. I would note that there are many issues that come on council agendas that involve expenditures of funds, and I believe that from a policy standpoint, the budget is not the only place to express concern regarding those expenditures. And I stand by my comments. I believe that one National League of Cities trip per year per council member is enough, and that's far more than what most other cities do. So again, I think that it's time for an overall review of this, and I would just ask that we review the overall policy and overall procedure. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, everyone. Let's see. We do have a light on from Alderman Malcolm Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I will be brief, but I was trying not to say anything, but I think I would be wrong to bite my tongue. This discussion came up at Legal and Finance the other day, and I have tried to push the council to do work sessions and to do retreats and to have these sorts of discussions where we could have meaningful discussion and dialogue about them, and if things need to be changed, then by all means, let's change them. At Legal and Finance the other day, this came up, and I'm looking at the minutes, and I said that there's going to be a work session on February 11th, and I think it would be very appropriate to take this type of discussion to that meeting where we're going to talk about how to get ahead of the budget and give some guidance to the mayor and to department heads in terms of what's important for the council. And it seemed to me that it was agreed at that meeting that the next time that this discussion would come up would be at that place where we're sitting down here on the floor and we could roll up our sleeves. I hate to say that it does seem like it's these sorts of discussions start to become political when we've had this discussion just a week ago and we all agreed that we would send this discussion somewhere else, and now here the discussion comes up at a council meeting when the cameras are rolling. I think that's unfortunate, and I think that certain members of the council are purposely trying to put the council in a bad light to be argumentative and have these fights publicly, and I just disagree, and I just don't see how at all that's helpful or beneficial to taking care of the business of Rapid City. If we want to have the discussion now and start the arguing and fighting, I guess that's what the council will do. I thought we had agreed to take this sort of discussion to February 11th. I'm a little disappointed.
Let's see, we also, and just a reminder, the motion on the floor, and we'll wrap this up shortly, but we do have a light on by Alderman Bob Hurlbut.
Thank you, Mayor. I just very briefly want to speak first in support of approving this motion. I was not part of the Legal and Finance Committee to know that this was coming up on February 11th, and I think that's the appropriate time to discuss it. I had previously expressed concerns about the number of council people going, and then I went on one myself, and I really see a lot of merit to both sides of the argument. These are very valuable conferences and seminars, yet we also have to weigh that with the taxpayer burden of the number of council people we do send, and I'd like to have the discussion. I don't know where I come down on it yet. I think there's a lot of positives on either side, but I just want to say that I think the February 11th is the appropriate time, and we should approve these this time. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. We also have a light on by Alderman Lloyd LaCroix.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I just wanted to say, when I first got on the council, this was brought up, and Sam had made the suggestion that maybe I wanted to go to one of the National League of Cities, and I did that fall, and I've been to every one since. During the budget process, it was stated, and from council leadership and the mayor, that we set aside $50,000 for continuing education for the council, for every year, for every council to go to 2 of these meetings a year, under the understanding that some choose not to go to the continued education classes. From my understanding, anything under $1,500 gets approved through council leadership and the mayor. Anything above and beyond that goes to the regular council. And I think everybody's followed that rules on the council. So I'm in support of the continued education that this gives, and I've learned a lot from it, and I'm looking forward to February meeting so we can try and hammer this out again. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Seeing no further lights, the motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. We are on to item number 29. I'm sorry, was there one no? Very good. Jackie, do you have that? Very good. Thank you, everyone. We're on to item number 29, and Alderman Hadcock, could you please read that in?
Number 29 is approve a change order to decrease the amount of contract of $31,558.07 with Golden West for the Rapid City Fire Department telephone system by $2,815 due to removal of a piece of equipment from the contract. And I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like the record to reflect my abstention on this item as Golden West is my employer. Thank you.
Very good. We'll so note. Any further discussion? Motion on the floor is for approval. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes with Alderman Sam Quaker abstaining. Item 31, please.
31 is to approve a request by CTEC Engineering Services for OS Development Incorporated to consider an application for the creation of tax increment district located south of South Dakota Highway 44, west of Reservoir Road and east of Elk Meadows. And I move approval. And the corrected resolution is in your folders if you have any more questions. Thank you.
That was an interesting motion. Okay. Motion on the motion on the floor is for approval as per the documentation provided in the blue folders. Is that correct? Yes. The first statement. Let's go to Marcia Elkins, our Growth Management Director.
Thank you. Just to explain the corrected resolution, just references this as tax increment district number 66. This is being done at the city attorney's request.
Very good. Thank you. We also have a light on from Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for the city attorney.
Go ahead. Please state your question.
My question is the applicant in this case is the same applicant as a development regarding the development over on DeGeese that the city is engaged in action against the applicant on. Are we talking two different matters here, or is it fair for the city to tie these two issues together? And because basically what we're looking at here is paying back early on the TIF, even though it's not certified that all the improvements have been completed.
Let's go to Jason Green, our city attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to be sure I'm on the right item. This is item 31.
Yes, that's correct. We're on item 31.
I think
51.
This is a...
Oh, I'm sorry. 51s. Okay, I apologize. It's been a long day.
Okay, very good. Any further discussion? Alderman Craig, you still have the floor. Very good. Motion on the floor is for approval. Marcia, did you have any additional comments? Very good. Let me clear you off. Motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 32, please.
Number 32 is to approve a request by CTEC Engineering Services for OS Development Incorporated to consider an application for tax increment district project plan, which would be number 66, located south of South Dakota Highway 44, west of Reservoir Road and east of Elk Meadows. And I approve with the revisions, again, in the reference into your, that's in your packet.
So your motion is for approval. Very good. Any further discussion? Motion is for approval. And we had a second from Alderman Tom Johnson. Let's go to Marcia Elkins, Growth Management Director.
Two items relative to this project plan. First, we've distributed in your blue packet an updated public improvements map that needs to be included in your approval. And secondly, now that we have approved the project, creation of the district, the city attorney is asking us to revise the project to plan to refer to it as number 66. So my understanding of the motion is to include those two changes.
Okay, very
Thank
good.
you.
So that is included in the motion, and that is all right with the seconder, correct? Very good. Everyone clear on that motion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all is in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Item number 35, please.
35 is to approve resolution writing off credit balance water billing accounts. And I move approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Alderman Malcolm Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to turn to our finance officer just to, are we going to actually write these off now, or are we going to give folks an opportunity to contact the city to collect these monies? I know we just put something on the website giving an additional level of notice, so are we going to actually give them an opportunity to come in and collect those dollars?
Very good. Let's go to Jim Preston, our city finance officer.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, there is on the website a link titled Water Refund. If anyone like to go to that, you can take a look and see if your name is listed there as funds coming in, and then you would contact the finance office and come in and show identification and be able to receive your credit. These are all less than $10. Even if you write these off, they will be on that link for a year, and they can come in, so there's no problem with that. So they will be there for that amount of time, and I think it's good that we advise the people they can do that. And the mayor has asked that I draft a press release, and I'm in the process of doing that to advise the public the same thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, everyone, for the discussion. Motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We are on to item number 48, please.
Number 48 is to approve the resolution directing the city staff convert the current 10-hour parking meters along Apalato Street to 2-hour meters, and I move approval.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Jason Green, our city attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This action may entail some cost to the city. We're attempting to discern whether or not we have a sufficient number of 2-hour meters to replace the 10-hour meters that are currently in place. That also may impact some other agreements that we're relying on the change in parking here. So for that reason, I would request that the council refer this matter back to the Legal and Finance Committee for further consideration.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a substitute motion to take item 48 back to the next Legal and Finance Committee. Any discussion on that continuation motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Item 51, please.
51 is to authorize the mayor and finance office to sign amendment to the contract to the private tax increment district number 54 between DTH LLC and the city of Rapid City, South Dakota, and I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. Jason, do you remember my question?
Let's go to Jason Green, our city attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The question essentially was that the council is currently taking action against a developer in the Big Sky area, and that one of the individuals that's involved there is one of the individuals who's involved in this particular tax increment district, which is, I believe, in North Rapid. The question was whether or not we should approve this in light of that other action. I think that certainly is something the council should consider whether they want to do that or not. But ultimately, this change will result in the taxpayers expending less funds to pay interest expense, because there is money in this tax increment fund at this point in time, and interest is accruing on the loan that the developer took out. So while it may be useful to send a message to the developer through this item, ultimately the taxpayers will lose as a result of having a higher interest expense to pay.
Very good. Thank you. Alderman Quaker, you still have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. So it helps to know that the recommendation come forward from the city attorney's office. I didn't realize that it was your recommendation to approve this. So is it safe to say that there are other avenues that the city could use to secure the completion rather than just this particular action?
Let's go to Jason Green, our city attorney.
Yes, I think there are definitely other avenues the council has available to it. the pending litigation being one. Others I would prefer to discuss with the council as it relates to the litigation in an executive session.
Thank you.
Alderman Quaker, you still have the floor. Anything else? Nope. Let's go on to Alderman Lloyd LaCroix.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to point out I'll be abstaining from this vote. It was brought to my attention that I might have a conflict of interest because my wife works in a roundabout way with one of these from these developers. So from now on, I'll be abstaining from DTH altogether.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Deb Hadcock.
I appreciate Sam bringing that up on Big Sky, but I also understand that that is a whole different issue than this issue, and we have to base it on this particular issue. If we did that, I think we also should say the good things that this man has did as well. I am fighting for Big Sky as well, but this man has done many a good thing as well. So we ought to give credit where credit is due and also take care of issues on people and follow up when they didn't follow through as well. So always say the good and the bad and don't base everything on one particular issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. The motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes with one abstention, and that is from Alderman LaCroix. Very good. That takes us to the end of the consent calendar. We are on to items 64 through 73, and the chair would look for a motion to open the public comment on items 64 through 73, please.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We are in the public comment period. We do not have any speaker request forms for items 64 through 73. Does anyone wish to talk to any of these items? If not, the chair would look for a motion to close the public comment period.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We are on to the non-consent calendar item, and we will start with item 64, please.
Number 64 is the first reading of ordinance number 5360 regarding supplemental appropriation number 1 for 2008, and I move approval.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Item 65, please.
65 is the first reading of ordinance number 5361, adding banquet halls with on-sale liquor establishments as a conditional use in the general agricultural zoning district by amending section 1734-030 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, and I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 66, please.
Number 66 is the first reading of ordinance number 5362 regarding supplemental appropriation number 2 for 2008, and I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to Jim Preston, our City Finance Officer.
Thank you, Mayor. I just would like to point out to the council that in your packet, there's been a couple changes on this, but in your packet, the correct total for this appropriation is $351,750. There's about a $2,000 correction to that. So 351,750. Thank you, Mayor.
Very good. Is that all right with the motion maker?
Sure.
And the seconder?
Yes.
Very good. Motion on the floor is for approval as amended. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 67, please.
67 is the first reading of ordinance number 5363, an ordinance amending section 1706 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by the City of Rapid City for rezoning from no-use district to low-density residential district located west of Reservoir Road and northwest of North Pitch Court, and I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 68, please.
Number 68 is the first reading of ordinance number 53 5364, an ordinance amending Section 1706 of Chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by the City of Rapid City for rezoning from no-use district to heavy industrial district located at 5406 Old Folsom Road, and I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Alderman Karen Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just listening to what the ordinance is. My understanding is it's 5363. Is that what we said? Have we changed the number on that one? Okay.
Yes, let's go back to Alderman Deb Hadcock.
Ms. Karen, when we started the meeting, that was a misprint, and I apologize, and I should have probably said that before I said that, but thank you, Ms. Karen, for that.
Okay, everyone clear on the motion? Motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We're on to items from Legal and Finance. Item number 69, please.
69 is a request by Brian Gonzalez of Century Development Company to consider an application for a second revised project plan for tax increment district number 50, Federal Beef, located west of US I-90, I-190, and West Boulevard North and north of Omaha Street, and I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. We're on to item number 70, please.
Number 70 is a resolution establishing a policy to reimburse the owners of private sewer and water service lines serving multiple residents for the cost of repairing or replacing such lines, and I move to continue.
Second.
We have a motion to continue. Do you have a date specific, please, or a location?
The next Public Works, if I
Okay.
could, sir.
Very good. And just for everyone's understanding, when we continue an item, it has to be to a date specific. So by saying to the next Public Works Committee, that gives us a date specific. Discussion on the motion. That is a continuation motion, and we will make sure that we talk only to the continuation motion. I'm going to hold pretty close to that, so please talk to that motion. Let's go to Alderman Bob Hurlbut.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just ask for the reasoning behind the motion to continue this. It appears that it might have been discussed at Legal and Finance when I wasn't there. I don't know, but what is the rationale for needing to continue this?
And are you directing your question to the motion maker?
The motion maker or any of the council.
Okay. Let's go to Alderman Deb Hadcock. And Alderman Hadcock, do you wish to answer the question?
If I could refer this, yield the floor to Ron Weifenbach, if I could.
Sure. We will yield to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the reasons that I'm supporting the continuation is this is, I believe, is an important policy for our city. Obviously, when we passed the Franklin Street thing, we had talked about a funding source. We need to enact this policy so that it's sustainable and equitable for now and in the future. And I'd like to make sure we get a firm grasp on what sort of impact this is going to have on our budget. And then with that in mind, I think it would be responsible for the council to have a funding source available so we don't actually push back projects that we have going right now. So I think that this is all in order, and I think that there's going to be something passed. I think it's an opportune time for us to make sure we're doing it right, because I think for the past 20 years, I don't think it's been done right. And I think this is our opportunity to correct that now and going into the future and provide a funding source. And I think that, we'll come up with an answer there. Thank you.
Very good. Alderman Hurlbut, you still have the floor, sir.
Thank you. And I guess my last question then would be, apparently that would include then Malcolm's item 70A, I'm presuming would also be continued for the discussion. Okay.
Separate issue. Very good. Anything else? Alderman Hurlbut. Okay, very good. Let's go to Alderman Karen Olson. Just a reminder to everyone, the motion on the floor is to continue this item to the next Public Works meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I would just suggest, I wonder if the motion maker would entertain a friendly suggestion to maybe give more than 2 weeks to continue this item. Seems to me that we have several issues that are on board that a longer period of time would be more appropriate.
Are you asking for a friendly amendment?
Yes.
We'll go to the motion maker and.
Well, I
At
guess
least a
too, if you
month.
take it to Public Works and we don't have it done, we can continue it at Public Works too, Karen, if we could.
And I only suggested that, Deb, just so that the public knows they don't have to show up at this next Public Works meeting.
Okay.
Because I believe we'll be missing some information next week. That would be just next week, and I think there'll be some missing information, and rather than having the public have to show up
Okay.
next week on this issue, that gives them time to.
Okay. We will turn to the motion maker. What is your pleasure, ma'am?
I guess either way, that's a good idea, and I appreciate that, Ms. Olson, but if we take it to Public Works again, I'd rather have them continue and we tell them at that point, because right now I think people are just looking at this, we want to refer it back to a different committee, if I'm correct, and see what we can do about helping people on this issue. So I would leave it at Public Works if I could, in all respect, with what you're saying, Ms. Olson, and then continue it there.
Okay, very good. The motion on the floor is continue this item, or actually send this item back to the Public Works Committee. Any further discussion on that motion? Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. We are on to Public Works Committee items. We do have an item 70A, and that is funding sources, and Alderman Malcolm Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to get something on the agenda so that maybe we can have some discussion tonight and then actually send it somewhere. This issue in item number 70 about potential funding sources for private or public sewer lines in multiple residences. I mean, I think it's an important policy discussion. I think the council's right to take their time to do that. My recommendation would be that we take potential funding sources for this to the .16 committee. When we first started the .16 committee, we took, I mean, right off the bat, we took $4 million off of that to send to the Sewer Enterprise Fund so the rates wouldn't be negatively impacted at that time. I think that part of the discussion about this is, you know, are we treating old infrastructure in the community like we're treating new infrastructure? Maybe that discussion could take place there, and .16 could maybe look at a percentage of the .16 every year as it comes in, or a certain dollar amount from the .16. But I think that's a potential funding source without then negatively impacting other projects that are already on CIP or Public Works. So I'm not asking anybody to approve anything today, just send something to .16 to have the discussion. So long-winded, but the motion would be that we send this funding sources discussion to the .16 committee.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor to ask the .16 committee to look at a funding source. Everyone clear on that motion? Let's go to Alderman Lloyd LaCroix.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that's a good idea because we need some, this subject needs some input from staff and in a non-public ways to where they can express their concerns openly and willingly, so we can get some good suggestion where we need to go and some good opinions. And so I'm in support of the motion on the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go next to Alderman Tom Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. If you're looking at funding sources, I think you need to look at the utility itself as well. Essentially, we ended up in this discussion regarding what amount that this council would contribute to what the argument was, whether a private line or a public line. And the argument really became down to almost ridiculous because we had a recommendation from the staff that we participate at a 40% level and have an assessed project. Now, assessed projects are upfronted by the city of Rapid City. The only change was that the council made in one specific area was we decided we would participate to a higher level. Now, all of a sudden we came into a kind of a difficult decision on, do we move forward with a project, and what level do we fund it at? Essentially, the project which brought forward this resolution, the previous resolution, had to do with an assessed project again that the city would always upfront. So I think that we need to analyze our utility fund, which probably, I think we're nearing the end of a 5-year program, along with this particular thing. And obviously, we're going to be doing the same thing with the water rates as well. And I think we need to move forward in a way that makes sense through growth in the community and also responsibility that we operate a good fund. Those are my brief comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Good points. Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Deb Hadcock.
I appreciate Lloyd and Malcolm bringing this forward. It's something that I've been looking at for a long time, is taking and trying to, number one, we're going to try to define old infrastructure in this case, and we're also, I think old infrastructure is something important that the city, Rapid City, should help take care of. And I do appreciate Mr. Johnson's points as well. I think it's well made, and I appreciate that as well. So I thank the council for supporting this if they would. I think it's a good suggestion and a good start for helping our infrastructure, and I appreciate everybody's help on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion on the floor is actually to ask the .16 committee to take a look at this as far as funding sources, and also probably looking at the definition of old infrastructure. And also, we'll also recognize the comments by Alderman Tom Johnson that we do also need to take a look at the enterprise funds. Everyone clear on the motion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. We're on to item 71, please.
Holiday Inn, North Street and Farlow Avenue Water Main Reconstruction Project.
Mayor?
Let's go to Jim Preston, our City Finance Officer.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. LaCroix read in the item. We do have just the one item. We've received 7 bids as are listed. Staff is recommending we accept the bid from RCS Constructions, with including the base bid, alternates 2, 3, and 4, which would make a total of $2,263,193.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept number 6, which is RCS Construction, for a dollar amount of $2,263,193. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Very good. We have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Alderman Tom Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. What was the advertising authority and what was the range that we expected this to come in at, please?
I asked the very same question. I think it was, we were real close here. Let's go to Jim Preston. Yeah, I think we're within a couple $1,000.
Good question. I left my sheet up there, and thanks, Dirk, for providing me with yours. The advertising authority was $2,265,000. So just a little bit higher. The engineer's estimate was $2,264,774.50.
Anything else?
Thank you.
That's about as close as I've seen them get lately. Very good.
That's
Any
okay.
further discussion? The motion on the floor is for approval. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. We are on to item 71A, which is a presentation by Mason Short, who is our airport director, and this is somewhat of a recap. Mason, you got a PowerPoint for us?
I certainly do.
Very good. The floor is yours, sir.
Recap of 2007 at Rapid City, and also a brief history of the air service developments that we have done. In addition, some of the things we got coming forward at the Rapid City Regional Airport. A couple of things. I just want to give you a big picture of what is air service development and what are some of the things we look at or factors in air service development. First, one of the things to keep in mind is that air travel grows at 2 to 3 times local economic growth. To give you an example, here in Rapid City, we've grown about 35% since 2001. Additionally, business travel grows slower than leisure travel. We've seen with the Legion Airlines coming in and providing very low fares to Las Vegas and now Phoenix, providing extensive growth in our leisure market out of Rapid City. To give you an idea, here in Rapid City, air travel is really big business. All of the airlines in 2006 grossed in excess of $110 million in ticket sales, just in 1 year. In 2007, just a quick recap of what was 2007. It was one of the worst years for domestic air travel ever. We had the highest number of delays nationwide. We had more lost luggage. We had more full and overbooked flights. We had the highest fuel prices ever affecting the airline travel industry. However, for us, we turned out pretty good. We added a new airline and a new destination. But we weren't exempt from the other issues up there. The number of delays, lost baggage, very full planes. It was a very ugly summer. And I'm sure, looking at Mr. Offenbach had a fun experience a few weeks ago trying to get to Oklahoma City. It is not as pleasant as it used to be, unfortunately, but it is very much a necessary part of economic development, not just for this community, but for our nation. Just to let you guys know where we stack up in the country for airports our size. We're the 8th fastest growing airport since 9/11. A lot of airports, a few airports above us have had some significant growth. The number one up there, and this is Sanford, Florida. That's where Frontier Airlines flies to, and for Orlando. They've had significant growth there. Give you an idea of what we've got right now. We've got five carriers serving Rapid City with year-round nonstop destinations in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Denver, Salt Lake City, Las Vegas, Phoenix, Mesa, actually going into the Mesa Gateway Airport down in the eastern part of the southeast corner of the Phoenix metro area. And we are still continuing Chicago service on an April through October. Give you an idea of what we're doing on a daily basis during the peak. We're running about 21 flights a day, 21 departures, 42 total flights, with 1,350 seats leaving Rapid City every day and coming into it. In 2007 in Rapid City, it wasn't quite a record year for us, but we had a really strong year. It was running level until October when Frontier and Allegiant added their destinations. We ended up the year at almost 500,000 total passengers. I'm throwing up here capacity to let you, we're going to talk a little bit about that in the next slide. Capacity is the total number of seats in our market, those that are available. And the load factor is the percentage of full seats. We are right up there with the majority of the rest of the airports, the top airports in the country, as far as high load factors. I think I saw in our region, Chicago O'Hare is running at about 79% full. So almost all the airports are running above 70. But when you get much higher than that, it's just virtually impossible to get across the country. I want to give you just a little quick history. If you take a look at a couple of things here in what's happened over the past few years in Rapid City. I've got two main columns up there that's showing the number of passengers under PAX and the capacity. As you can see, when we've had an increase in capacity, we've also seen an increase in the number of passengers. And when we've seen a downturn in capacity, we've seen a slight decrease in some of our passengers in a few years. But on the whole, what this speaks to us is that if we've got seats available, if we've got airlines flying in Rapid City, people are taking advantage of them. And that shows the demand in our market and the vibrancy of air service in Rapid City. In 2008, we're going to have, in addition to, in comparison to last year, Frontier and Allegiant are going to be adding about 80,000 seats to our market. We're estimating the capacity will be just a little bit above 390,000 total seats, which will be the highest amount of capacity we've ever had. But that's only about a 10% increase in capacity over the numbers we saw in 2005. So my projections for 2008 is that if demand stays constant like it has, our round-trip airfares stay below $400, we should employ between 270 and 290,000 passengers in 2008. A couple of things I just want to talk about what we do as far as a community. Part of my office and the community and the Air Service Task Force does is in air service development. First of all, keep in mind that we're going to try and do steady and slow growth of air service. Also, that good yields to the airlines. When airlines are making more money, our market will expand faster than if they are not making good money. We need to have continued communication with the airlines. We need to continue to support tourism efforts in the Black Hills. That is probably one of the leading causes for the development we've seen in recent years. Also need to realize and keep in mind that air service development is a very slow process. A lot of things need to fall into place, and the airlines need to make sure that they're making the best investment for their limited resources that they have. It took us over a year and a half to get Frontier into Rapid City. It is not a fast process. Looking forward in Rapid City, at the airport, we do have some constraints. We're running out of ticketing space. We can only accommodate probably one more entrant into Rapid City, another airline. Right now, our parking lot is limited and spilling over. We're overfull. Our terminal also needs to be updated and expanded to accommodate accommodate our growth. The TSA and the FAA, our main regulatory bodies, have significantly increased the regulatory requirement issues that we have to comply with as a staff level since 2004. Current projects that we have underway and projected to accommodate some of these things, right now we're in the design phase on expanding our parking lot, and we're also in the design phase for expansion of our concourse and the security checkpoint. Those looking at going at 2008 and 2009 respectively. In addition, our projected projects from 09 through 11, we're planning on doing an interior rehabilitation of the terminal building, expanding second floor, reconfiguring the second floor, doing some ticketing reconfiguration. In addition to that, installing a new inline baggage screening system, which should help speed up the baggage screening process at the airport. So in conclusion, we've got excellent air service for a community of our size and a great track record of growth. We are sitting very well for a community of 67,000. Just a couple of things, a couple of other facts here. If we continue to grow at 10%, which we've done in recent years, we'll exceed 1 million total passengers or 500,000 enplanements by 2014. That's sneaking up on us quick. The continued support of air service, the Air Service Task Force, the tourism is for this entire community, and communicating that information to the carriers who serve us is very vital. And finally, all the proposed enhancements and projects we have at the airport will be completed without any impact on the city's general fund. And with that, I would stand for any questions you might have.
Very good. We do have a light on from Alderman Tom Johnson.
You may have answered my question as you went through that, but one of the things when I go to the airport, you have a tremendous bottleneck in where they check your baggage and where you get through. My assumption is what you told us is that you're going to look at somehow reconfiguring that or making that flow much better, because really I'll tell you that our airport is substandard with regards to that. We have a beautiful airport and there are a lot of areas that we have a lot of extra room, but that's not one of them.
Exactly. That is what we're planning on doing in 2009. We're planning on widening the concourse, widening that throat, and having 2 lanes side by side instead of on top of one another, and making that a lot freer flowing. And hopefully the TSA will have enough staffing to make it work.
That's great news. Every time I go through there, I think about bringing that up here at the council. That is really a problem at our airport. I'm not sure that ticketing is the problem, but I think that certainly is the biggest problem that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to, we do have a light on from Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mayor. Mason, I appreciate your presentation. It's very important for Rapid City and for economic growth and the quality of life to have a strong airport here. We appreciate you moving forward with some of the things that Alderman Johnson mentioned, some of the bottleneck. I'm not so concerned about that. The nice thing is all the enhancements and things that you talk about there's no impact on the city budget. Although I do got to tell you that adding the new airlines and things has been a major impact on my wallet. Sending my wife to Oklahoma City to visit her granddaughter, and Monday heading to Jamaica. But I guess that all being said, that wouldn't be possible hadn't we not added Frontier Airlines and some of those airlines that you've added. I'm just hoping on Monday I get out of town. Thanks, Mason.
Thank you. Mason, very nice presentation. Just, I would assume that if there's a request by the media or anybody else, that you can provide them with copies of your PowerPoint.
Absolutely.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. We're on to item 71B, and this is actually a resolution, which is a letter of support for the West River Education Facility. You should actually have a copy of that in your package. And what this is, I guess I can address this. The Board of Regents is looking to actually expand and actually have a presence with a classroom facility in Rapid City, very similar to what we have, what the legislature approved last year for the Sioux Falls area. This would be a classroom building that would be utilized by all the major facility or universities in the state, whether it's USD, SDSU, Northern, also Black Hills State. They would all have a presence, as they all do actually currently teach classes in the Rapid City area. So with that, we'll open it up either for a motion or for discussion. Let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to make a comment on this when I ran for city council. I think prior to the election, one of the questions that I think one of the mayor's meetings was, is what can we do for economic development in Rapid City? And that was one of the questions I really wanted to answer. And I think this is one of the things that we can really do besides having a great airport, is having a great higher education opportunities. And I know that there's been some work that's went into this project from some of the council members that are here tonight. And I wanted to recognize Alderman Chapman for bringing some of this stuff forward with his contacts and that he's made throughout the community, he's made throughout the country. I know he gets sometimes chastised for his travel, but I think that is very important to our community to have people like him moving these types of things forward. And I think that was one of the mentions I wanted to make. And I think that the resolution that says that the council and citizens of Rapid City are behind this new venture is very important to me and very important to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. We do also have a light on from Alderman Malcolm Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a note that Kathy Johnson, who is a Board of Regent, will conduct our City Council information meeting tomorrow, and we'll have an entire hour to speak to this issue. But I couldn't agree with Ron more that I think one of the ways that you improve economic development in the community is that you tie education to economic development, and basically the folk that will be out there being educated at the center out there is a potential future workforce for Rapid City. So, I just think that there is a link between city government and higher education, and if we're being asked to do something, a resolution of support, then by all means we should do that. And enthusiastically, I would recommend that the council adopt this resolution. So I would move that forward. That is a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Thank you for those comments. Additional discussion. Alderman Tom Johnson. Whoops, and Tom, I think I just dropped you off. I'm sorry about that. Let me get you back up.
I think I did that, Mayor. I just want to say that I believe this is a public-private partnership involved in this project. This is another way that the community, the city of Rapid City, works in conjunction with other areas of government, I think, to make our community better. And sometimes we don't toot our horn enough, but I really think that this is another way that the city of Rapid City isn't joining in and making certain that Rapid City is a good place to live and work, and also to get an education. So kudos to those that are involved in the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Karen. Did you have your light on? I'm sorry. We've been bumping lights here. Let's go to Alderman Karen Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's important as we move this discussion forward. It was interesting to me to note that as we looked at the degree granting situation for the counties in the north west part of South Dakota, it was interesting that Meade County, our adjacent county, showed a lower percentage of their population having a college degree. And so I can see that I thought it was very interesting that Shannon County, which is often cited for its many problems, actually has a higher degree of college completion than Meade County and Lawrence County. So, and the significant difference there was their Indian colleges. So I think the Board of Regents has taken a very positive step forward in enabling non-traditional students, which is what the main group of people who will be attending this facility, to continue their education for an undergraduate degree and also in graduate degrees. And as our community as a whole moves forward with nanotechnology and the various kind of sciences that are associated with the deep underground science lab, the issues of a well-educated workforce is extremely important. And as we move forward, I think that this enables Western South Dakota to position itself very positively as we provide that well-educated workforce as these innovative technology kinds of jobs grow and develop. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Motion on the floor is for approval. Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. We are on to item 71C, which is a travel request And this was for municipal, actually for the South Dakota Municipal League Day at the legislature. And just for clarification, the reason it's actually on the agenda, it was actually on the Legal and Finance agenda, but I don't believe we ever actually had a motion. Is that correct, Jackie? Not exactly sure why it's being added. It was not on the agenda? Okay. I thought it was. I was told that they actually even had some discussion on this. Anyway, the chair would look for a motion to approve a travel request to send a number of folks to the South Dakota Municipal League Day in Pierre, and the date is February 5th and 6th.
Move approval.
We have a motion and a second, and just for clarification, the dollar amount is $1,211.75. We have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Alderman Malcolm Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just quickly, I think that the discussion was about some other names that had come up, knowing that we would continually add names to this as more city staff and others said that they were going to go over to the municipal day at the legislature.
Thank you. I think that is correct. Thank you, Alderman Malcolm Chapman. Let's go to Alderman Karen Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we make discussion of those experiences that are valuable for our community, I believe that participation in our South Dakota Municipal League is one of the most important. It provides continuing education for our council members and our staff as well. It also offers the opportunity for furthering issues that are of importance to our city specifically and to cities throughout South Dakota. Last year, with the help of South Dakota Municipal League, we were able to secure enabling legislation that will allow us to move forward with our meeting the requirements of high-quality water in our community via the Stormwater Phase 2. So I certainly applaud those that are participating in this meeting. I also applaud our staff, who are very active. A number of our government, our city staff folks hold positions of influence in Municipal League and therefore increase their own expertise and their ability to get things done statewide. So this is a good activity and one that we can support in a very positive way. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Tom Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to point out that I think that it's important for the city, our community, to be engaged in both local and national issues and education at all levels. And one of the things that I want to point out is that while this trip might seem like it's a little less expensive than a trip to either New Orleans or a trip to Washington, D.C., I think I've spent probably about 3 different nights doing a search in D.C. to try and find a motel less than $200 a night. It can't be done. In Pierce, South Dakota, it still can be done. And it also takes a little longer to drive to D.C. than it does to Pierre. So obviously, when you take a look at the travel expenses, you can't really judge apples to apples and oranges to oranges. It costs a whole lot more to attend some of the national things, but I think it's important that the council and the city be engaged both at local and national levels. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion on that motion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Item 71D. This is an issue dealing with water and was placed on the agenda by Alderman Karen Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to thank our public works staff, specifically the water department, for their very rapid response to a very serious water break at the corner of Autumn Hills Drive, at the Autumn Hills Bridge and Sheridan Lake Road. To say that it was a river coming down Sheridan Lake Road, it's probably, I mean, cars were actually having to slow down. We're running through water that was hubcap deep. Our folks responded very positively, very quickly. A number of neighborhoods were without water, but it was very brief. By middle afternoon, the water had been once again connected, and then they continued to respond quickly. In the wintertime, they've poured concrete. The curb and gutter are nearly in again. I just have to say thank you to the excellent staff who responded quickly and efficiently to solve this really serious water break. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. And Dirk, how many gallons? It was an incredible amount. What was it? 238,000 gallons. Interesting. Very good. And yes, I agree. The staff responded quite promptly, and we've gotten a number of comments from the public to the mayor's office complimenting the quick action by, and the fact that literally there was hardly any interruption in service at all. So thank you so much. Very good. We are on to item 72, which is our signed code of appeals. Item number 72, please.
72 is a notice of appeal from the requirements of the Rapid City Sign Ordinance, Chapter 1528 by Cabela's Retail Incorporated for wall signs located at 3231 East Mall Drive and continue till February 19th at the applicant's request.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to continue this item to February 14th. Is that correct?
19th.
19th. Very good. Thank you. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 73, please.
73 is a notice of appeal from the requirements of the Rapid City Sign Ordinance, Chapter 1528 by Rapid Center LLC for joint, I can't talk tonight, for a joint identification sign in Pennington County, South Dakota, and it's to be continued till February 19th at the applicant's request.
We have a motion and a second to also send or continue this item to the February 19th meeting. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. We are now on to the public hearing items, items 74 through 133. And the chair would look for a motion to open the public hearing comments for items 74 through 133. We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify. Marcia, let's see, are you going to pull something? Is that what you're going to do? Okay. So the motion on the floor is to open the public comment period. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Let's see. We will ask at this time if any items are to be pulled from the consent calendar. Let's go to Marcia Elkins, our Growth Management Director.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll be asking that items 89, I believe it's 101A or B, whichever number that got assigned, which is the warp, and 102 be pulled from the consent calendar for possible action.
Okay, so that's item 89, and I believe it was 101A was the warp, which was added, and item 102. Is that correct? Okay. Any additional items? Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question that may or may not fit into this.
Okay, well, why don't you ask your question and we'll see.
I would like to direct it to maybe you, Mayor, or our city attorney. We open up the public hearing and we open it up from items 74 to 133.
Yes.
Then we close it, and then when we come to those items, those people who spoke on those items really don't necessarily get a chance to speak again. And I'm wondering if it would be more appropriate for us to change our procedure to, or maybe it doesn't fit, to actually, when we get to that item, allow the people in the public to speak at that time. It seems as though we kind of work against ourselves when they talk ahead of time, then we get to that item, and then we talk about it again, and they're already sat back down in the audience. So maybe someone can answer that for me. Thank you.
Very good. I'll do it. I'll try, and then we'll go to Jason Green. The procedures are actually part of the basically the procedure that was adopted by the City Council. That's why it's actually listed this way. But let's go to Jason Green, our City Attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. That's exactly right. The reason for the comment periods are in the locations they are is that is what the council has approved. At previous times, the council has allowed comments on individual items as they come up. From my perspective, it has been more efficient to take all the public comment at one point in time. You only have to open one public hearing rather than opening a public hearing for every item. So it really does promote efficiency. If the council wants to change that, that's certainly within the prerogative of the members of the council.
Do I still have the floor?
Yes, Alderman Weifenbach, you still have the floor, sir.
I understand the efficiency, which I have concern about, but my biggest concern is that we're practicing open government with our constituents that want to talk and in the public, and if there's some opportunity that we can allow to make sure when we come back to their item, we give them a chance to, maybe that's something we can talk about later. Thank you.
Yep, Alderman Weifenbach, I think it's exactly right. If there is the desire of the council to discuss this, the appropriate place to probably take it up is during Legal and Finance, or even actually during one of our work sessions where we can actually talk about procedures. And let's go to Alderman Malcolm Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll be brief. It is the policy that the council adopted, and there is another opportunity for the public to speak. They get an opportunity to state their case, talk about their issue. If there's a question for them, once the issue is pulled to the council, that discussion should take place amongst the council and not back and forth with the public. If there's a specific question for an applicant, that applicant still gets an opportunity to speak again. But what we've done is just reeled in the conversation so that the decision-making about that particular item then rests with the council. That's the reason this.
Okay, the motion on the floor is to approve the consent calendar items, and that is items 74 through 116. That is the consent calendar items, with the exception of 89, 101A, and 102. Do we have a motion, Becky? Okay. We have a motion and a second, and I'm going to repeat that motion just for clarification. Yes.
You actually need to take your public comment before you vote on your consent calendar.
That's exactly right. I'm sorry about that. Ron, see what you did to me? Very good. We are in, let's see, did we take a vote to open the public comment period? Yes, we did. Okay. We are at the public comment period, and we're taking public comment on items 74 through 133. We do have a number of speaker request forms, and we have a James Geis from 1619 Morningside Drive on item 120. And there again, just a reminder for everyone, we do have a 3-minute time limit, and you'll see the lights up here. So if you see it turning yellow, that means you're getting close to the end. Okay. If you please identify yourself for the record, please.
Jim Giese, owner of 1021 St. Joe. Trying to open, my wife is a antique shop there. The letter of the law for what it's zoned now, office commercial. You have libraries, museums, art galleries. It's very close to that. There is some retail involved, but it's on the far end of the spectrum of very light use. I guess I'm kind of looking for some direction here as to, I don't really need or want the general commercial, but I was told that's where I had to proceed to. The property over there right now, kind of limited as to what you can do with it other than just rental property.
Okay, thank you. Marcia, did you have a comment? I assume that this is identified as general commercial in the future land use plan? Marcia?
No, it is not. That
Okay.
is the amendment that was being sought when this item appeared in front of the Planning Commission. Planning Commission recommended denial without prejudice, and at that time, Mr. Giese indicated concurrence with that request. So this property is currently office commercial, and that was an action that was taken by council within about the last 18 months, if I recall correctly.
Okay,
So.
very good. Thank you. Any additional comments? You still have a little bit of time, sir.
No comment.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see. We also have a speaker request form from Shannon. Is it Gutzmer? I'll be close there, I hope, on items 121 and 133. And if you can make sure I pronounce your last name.
It's Gutzmer, Shannon Gutzmer. My property is located to the south of the property that is requesting a zoning change. This is item 121 and 133. Zoning exists to protect property owners and to make sure a city grows in a logical, orderly way. It is not logical or orderly to take a property surrounded by residential properties and change it to a commercial property. My neighborhood has been there for 30 years. My home was built in 1978. When I bought my home 6 years ago, one of the reasons I liked the property was that it was not near commercial property or property likely to be developed. The Exxon gas station is near my property. However, it is down the street 1 to 2 blocks and across 4 lanes of traffic. To the north of the Exxon property, there is a natural barrier, a drainage ditch separating it from residential properties. The Lutheran Social Services also has a 2-lane road separating it from residential properties. The proposed change to the neighborhood will have significant impact. After all, retail space and the selling of anything relies on being in a high-traffic area. Retailers want lots of traffic so they can sell more. Traffic will increase not only along Sheridan Lake Road, but behind our homes. Stoplights will be needed and also a turning lane. The bike path is also right in front of this property and is used all the time by the neighborhood. There is not a scarcity of land for commercial use. To the south 2 miles is the new development along Catron with vacancies. This property was planned to be away from residential properties. To the north 2 miles is Jackson Boulevard with also vacant buildings. These properties, of course, are not cheap as residential property. They are also because they are already commercial properties. I have found one commercial property on Cathedral Drive that is also 1.5 acres, like the zoning that's trying to be changed, with no building on it. I also believe it has no city water, sewer, or electric. Its value is $980,000. My home was appraised for $158,000 the last time it was appraised before the housing slump. If you take my neighbors, the Ricks, Merkles, and my home, and we each sell our home for $200,000, that equals $600,000. Roughly the size of the area to be rezoned. This means by changing it to a commercial property, even with no building on it, it will basically increase the value to by $380,000 just instantly by having it changed to commercial. I walked around my neighborhood and spoke with my neighbors. I have collected more than 30 signatures. I've already handed in 11 to the Planning Commission meeting. I've walked around with Mrs. Langlis' brochure and told my neighbors that she wants to build a business that is similar to the houses that they build. I told them that she has a custom closet business and other retail space would also be available. At that time, I hadn't even read about a sandwich shop. It doesn't matter how nice the building looks or its curb appeal. The neighborhood does not want a business in the middle of it. I believe it'll decrease the value of my home and start a trend to commercialize Sheridan Lake Road, pushing families further out of the city. And lastly, I'd like to ask you, would you like a business right behind your backyard fence?
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate your comments. We also have a speaker request form from a Cheryl Stewart, 2711 Rawhide Drive. And there again, ma'am, you had 122 and 133. I think it might have been 121 and 133.
That's right.
Yep.
I'm sorry, 121 and 133.
Very good.
We have a very quiet neighborhood. I'd like to see it stay that way. As the previous speaker said, we have a Common Sense store across the street, and there's a Lutheran Social Services, and otherwise it's residential property. It's nice place to raise children, and there's dogs that run around, and you can walk, and it's very quiet, and I'd like to see it stay that way. I don't want to see it rezoned to commercial. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We also have a speaker request form from a Kathy Rick on items 121 and 133. It looks like it's 3018 Country Club Court.
3018 Country Club Court.
Very good.
Skip and Kathy Rick, and I'll read the letter I had posted in the paper. Sheridan Lake Road rezoning turns residential commercial. If this can happen in our neighborhood, it can also happen in yours. Our home is located on Sheridan Lake Road, across from the commercially zoned property containing Common Sense and Lutheran Social Services. Recently, we were informed that land located in the center of our neighborhood, which is bordered on 3 sides by single-family homes, may be rezoned to commercial, making it available to a variety of businesses. And then I added, anybody can comment or ask questions at a public hearing on the proposed rezoning, blah, blah, and so on. Please help us keep our neighborhood zoned residential. And an email I had sent to the planning committee, as homeowners with property adjacent to 2925 Sheridan Lake Road being considered for commercial rezoning, we are concerned about the adverse effects on the comforts, value, and safety of our home. As follows. Additional street traffic, and if you've been there, I go to the Y for exercise at 5:30 in the morning and come back at 7:30, and right by Common Sense, and I've been the 8th car behind the school bus that stops. So that's traffic. That's a traffic jam for a residential. Okay. And then other things would be lighting and signage, security light. My husband and I were in retail, both goods and services, for 40 years in southeastern South Dakota. We know what security lights do to a neighborhood. And of course, our business was not in the neighborhood. It was in the commercial area. But lighting and security and signage, bike path safety, kids are playing on, not when it's 2 below, but they're playing on that bike path all the time from the area right there. Noise and visual distractions associated with retail businesses, such as trucking, deliveries, intrusion of foot traffic, strangers in the neighborhood, and so on. And another thing, I'm no physicist, but if they have a hard surface parking, I don't, where does the water go, you know? But anyway, we have a lot of problems with that. Zone for low-density housing, the property at 2935 Sheridan Lake appears to us to be an ideal location for one-story duplex structures. It seemed to be, the more you read, the more need there is in the city like this. We're very hopeful that our neighborhood of homes will remain as is, not partially zoned for commercial use. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We also have a speaker request form from a Mike, is it Rawson? And Mike, if you just identify yourself, 2705 Rawhide Drive.
Yeah. Again, my name is Mike Rawson. At 2705 Rawhide Drive, we live in a cul-de-sac there on Rawhide. A lot of kids, including my 2 young ones. It's a great little neighborhood. Go to my backyard and my deck in the back of my house. We would be looking at the back of this structure, so we're just to the southwest of it. And, well, that's not a view that I necessarily want, and it's not something I want to worry about as my kids are in the backyard when, you know, who knows what will end up being leased out in there and what kind of traffic, foot traffic, or of what it could attract when my small fence borders that land. Again, I'm just here just to make, you know, to represent the fact that we are against that. And personally, my wife and I have had enough to worry about this year, both in life and financially with medical issues of mine, and I don't need another worry about, well, the financial impact of it on the #1 asset that my family has, especially in today's market and today's economic condition around the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. We also have a speaker request form from Todd. Is it Nye? Am I close? On items 121 and 133 and 2702 Rawhide Drive.
That is correct. I'm Todd Nye, 2702 Rawhide Drive, Mr. Mayor, council members. I think we've probably all spoken about this, and my biggest concern is when I bought this property 6 years ago, I backed directly up. I'm just to the west of this property. I do have some pictures of my yard, although they're green. I wish it looked like this right now. I would be facing directly looking at this property. My backyard is fenced. I've got a lot of great bushes around it. It's quiet. You know, I don't think there's any shortage of strip malls in Rapid City. I'm not sure if there's a city ordinance that they require to have some kind of payday cash loan and other things in them, but it seems to me that another strip mall probably isn't required. I certainly don't want to be looking out my backyard or out my bedroom window at this structure, and there really isn't any kind of security fencing, privacy fencing, whatever it is that's going to be put around dumpsters or anything else that would be located at this property that's going to improve the view. When I purchased this property, I purchased it because it's on a cul-de-sac. It is quiet. It's a nice little neighborhood. I can appreciate the need to develop and try to improve the area, but I would just ask that if you were sitting in your back deck trying to enjoy an afternoon, do you really want to be looking at the back of a business, a strip mall, etc.? Increased noise, increased trash, lighting, all the other things are going to be associated with that. So I appreciate what these folks are trying to do and bring some development to the city, but even a beautifully decorated strip mall is still a strip mall, and I really prefer not to have it in my backyard. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have a speaker request form from Akil Nobi? Am I close?
You're real close. It's Kale McNabo. I'm with Spurlick Consulting. I represent the petitioner on items 121 and 130 item, the one everybody else has been talking to. I know this came forward to you from Planning Commission, and I would actually ask this item be heard and approved tonight. There's a couple of mitigating issues. The city staff report has outlined the intrusion into the residential neighborhood. It's been spoken to thus far. I would like to point out as a point of clarification that these aren't people's side yards. It's the rear of their lot lines. This property is surrounded by cul-de-sacs. It's the only one on this block that takes access directly from Sheridan Lake Road. One driveway, the rest of the neighbors enter off of cul-de-sac streets. And there's this lot facing everybody's rear yard. The other issues I'd like to cover are setbacks. When we take this to neighborhood commercial zoning, it's a 30-foot rear yard setback, 25 on the sides. It's required to have a 6-foot opaque privacy fence along the entire perimeter of this property as it abuts residential. As far as the dumpster screening, the applicant would be more than happy to screen the dumpster. The other issue is traffic. Right now, there's a driveway that takes access off of Sheridan Lake Road, the only one on this block, on that side, serving this residential 1.5 acre lot. What I would propose is to work with the city staff to move this driveway further from its current alignment, which doesn't meet the approach corner clearance separation. Move it to the most favorable position, provide as much clearance from the adjoining streets as possible. That's certainly an issue that we can conquer and provide better driveway circulation. And what we eliminate is residential development of a lot and increasing additional residential lots backing on to Sheridan Lake Road. I know the owner's got some visual aids for you. I'd like to show you, talk about some of the uses of the property, but I'd be more than happy to field any questions if you have any.
Very good. Don't see any lights. Very good. We'll go on. We also have a speaker request form from Jeff Loggy on items 121 and 133. Jennifer, you're going to go first? Okay, we have a speaker request form from Jennifer Langeth, item 121 and 133.
Good evening. I'm Jennifer Langeth, and Jeff Loggy's my brother and my partner in Double D Properties, which is what we're calling this piece of property. We're home builders, land developers, and we have an organizational company as well. So we're looking at this space because we need to have an office space, and because of the type of business that we're in being construction, you know, and that we do have this home organizational products that we sell that we don't fit into any other kind of classification. A little bit of history on the property is a while back. For some of you that have lived here for a while, you may remember that in the 70s, 60s, 70s, that this actually was a retail location. It housed Hauk Sporting Goods. And I do, Marcia Hauk, the owner of the properties here as well. It has been a rental for many, many, many years and is in deteriorating condition. The owner wants to sell the property for various reasons, and some of them have to be with the cost for upkeep, because the home, it is expensive to upkeep. And speaking, you know, looking at this property, I mean, from our perspective, and we certainly understand the neighbor's concern too, we don't see that this does make sense to keep it as a single family residence. It's really not the highest and best use of the land on such a major arterial road with the traffic speeds that go by here. As Cale said, the neighbors do back up to the property. You have their homes, which are nice homes, very pleasant on the south side, and then you do have the Pennington County housing properties, which are to the north of the property. And as they said, neighborhood commercial across the street and office commercial. We really don't see an increase in traffic coming into this property, because this neighborhood commercial would serve, I mean, the intent is to serve the neighbors and people passing by. Our vision is that we would like to have office space. And I've put together a brochure. I don't know if we can show these at this meeting or not, but this is, I've got a picture of the property as it is now. We would look at having lease space in there. Because our office is in there, we are very concerned about about the type of businesses that are located here. So we do understand the concern of the change to neighborhood commercial, but so we're concerned about the uses of that. We don't want anybody in there that's going to be a detriment to the type of business that we do, and we're a custom home builder. We're not looking at any type of cinder block building. This is the home that's in there right now, and you can see that it's in somewhat deteriorating condition. This is another view of it. This is a picture through the breezeway area. So what our intent would be is to remove, these are the neighbors to the south, and this is, I'm hurrying here, this is a type of project that we're looking at building here. So we don't want to be a detriment to the neighborhood. We feel that what we're doing is actually quite beneficial to the neighborhood too, by improving the property values.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's see, we do still have a speaker request form from Jeff Loggy. Did you wish to talk? If you would, please come up to the mic, please, and identify yourself.
My name is Jeff Loggy. Hi again. When we first looked at this property, and I mean, honestly, my dad's been looking at this property for years and thought there's got to be some great use to this property. And when we decided it was time to try to produce our own office, we thought, you know, this would be a nice setting. We're a residential builder. We want to make it fit as more of a residential type style building, so it looks good in the neighborhood, create a nice buffer. The project's going to probably be located mostly in the center of the project, so we're really not going to impede on any of the property lines. We just kind of want to have a place of our own to one, merchandise some of our new products, being the building and some of the timber framing and some of the products we have to offer. So we felt this would be a good area to do something like that and not really create a strip mall feel. I just don't like that word strip mall because that's not what we're trying to create here. But we were just hoping we could work in with the neighborhood, and you know, we've talked to some of the neighbors, and some of them had, you know, have all different concerns, and we felt like we addressed a lot of them. But I think this would be a great project for the area and really improve that lot. Thanks.
Thank you. That is all the speaker request forms we have. Is there any additional comments on items 74 through 133? Additional comments? Yes, sir. Yep. If you could come to the podium, please, and identify yourself for the record.
My name is Jim Merck. I live at 3010 Country Club Court, and it's south of that area that they're trying to change the zoning on. I believe that if it's changed to commercial, then it really takes away not only the residential zoning, but it doesn't even allow someone to put apartment house or a condo or townhouses in there. It just eliminates those right off the bat. So it's only commercial then. There's a commercial property right across the street, both to Common Sense and also Lutheran Social Services. That road extends or could extend back. There's room behind those areas, both behind Common Sense and also the Lutheran Social Service. And actually, their building now that we just saw here looks pretty darn close to what Lutheran Social Services looks like. So why don't they use the land to the east of the Lutheran Social Services? There's land available there, and I believe it's probably commercial. If there's commercial property there already, I'm sure that it's probably commercial also. Okay, and like Shannon said before, 2 miles south, you just put in 2 strip malls, and it's all commercialized there. Why not just add it right down there, down by Katrin? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Any additional comments? I've already spoken, I'm sorry. Any additional? The policy is that everyone is given 3 minutes, ma'am. Is there anyone else that wishes to talk about items 74 through 133? Any further discussion? Yes, ma'am. And there again, ma'am. Thank you for following the rules. And if you could please just identify yourself for the record.
Well, my name is Joan McNally, and I also have a backyard that backs up into this area. And some of the things I think have been brought up, but not quite as much as some of us have thought about. What is this going to do to our residential value? We also have had water problems in the past, and with this, what I think they call it flat top, when you have a lot of flat areas and you're going to have a lot of water, that's another problem we have. We have a stock dam in our front yard that has been used as a metering dam since we moved in about 1973. So we love our neighborhood. We love it where it's private, and that's the reason most of us have purchased housing or built houses in that area. And we do hope that you will take this into consideration if you were living where we are. I think you would like to keep it that way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And just for the record, I used to play in that pond, and you knew that. Very good. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, we will move on, and we will look for a motion to approve the consent calendar items 74 through 116, with the exception of 89, 101A, and 102. Is that correct? Marcia, did you catch all that? Very good. Chair would look for a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Alderman Holt, but did you have a?
How far?
Go ahead, please.
Which items were to be approved here?
We are on the consent calendar items, and this is on items 74 through 116. 74 through 116. Let's go to Jason Green, City Attorney.
Just for further clarification, this is the continued consent. All these
Yes.
items are to be continued.
That is correct. Okay. Everyone clear on the motion? This is basically this is our consent calendar for continued items. Okay. Bob, you still have your light on? You're good? Very good. Motion on the floor is for approval as listed. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We are on to item 89, please.
It's a request by Dream Design International, Inc. for a preliminary plot on Track A and B Rushmore Center located north of East Anamosa Street, south of England Street, and east of North Lacrosse Street. And I recommend approval.
We have a motion and second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to Marcia Elkins, our Growth Management Director.
Thank you. Based on your policy, I need to inform you that the information on this item did not come forward prior to 4 p.m. on Wednesday. As such, it was placed on your agenda for continuation. The information has been received, and if you wish, it could be approved with stipulations at your direction. And I would ask that the motion includes those stipulations.
I'd add approval with stipulations.
And that's all right with the seconder. Okay, the motion and the second is to approve with stipulations. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We're on to item 101A, which is the approval of a warp. Everyone should have the information and documentation within your blue folders. Marcia, let's go to Marcia Elkins.
Thank you. This is the related item. It also relates to item 102, which is the actual variance. We're asking that the waiver of right to protest, council and the mayor and finance officer be authorized to sign that document, which would then mean they were in compliance, and you could act on item 102 and approve it with stipulations.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second to authorize the mayor and the finance officer to sign the waiver of right to protest. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We're on to item 102, please.
It's a request by Dream Design International, Inc. for variation of the subdivision regulations to waive the requirements to install curb, gutters, sidewalk, street, light conduit, water, sewer, pavement along East Anamosa Street and Luna Avenue and Riley Avenue, and the intersection of Riley Avenue and Sunside Avenue, as per 16.16 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, located north of East Anamosa Street, south of England Street, and north of North Lacrosse Street. And I'd move approval with stipulations.
We have a motion and a second for approval with stipulations. Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to Alderman Karen Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just making certain that adequate pedestrian consideration has been given as this project moves forward in view of the fact that they're asking not to install sidewalk. So my only question is, this is going to have pedestrian traffic, and I think it's important that we provide for that.
Let's go to Marcia Elkins, our Growth Management Director.
If I might, Mayor, the issues related to this really do deal with timing of it. Anamosa Street is along the bottom of the property, or the southern end of it. As you all are aware, that project is a city project that we've received earmark funds for. And as such, that road will be constructed as part of a city project. Again, the developer can use that as part of his surety. The north-south road, which is Luna, which will come from the Rushmore Crossing project, also will have sidewalks as part of it. But again, it addresses the timing is what the variance does. The applicant's trying to plat this off to one large parcel, and then we'll come back and replat the property into individual parcels. So yes, we also are very concerned about the provision of pedestrian improvements on both of those roads, because both Anamosa, Rushmore Crossing to the north, will require that there be pedestrian facilities.
Very good. The floor is still yours, Alderman Olson.
Thank you. So then I'm understanding that as Anamosa is constructed, then there will be sidewalks adjacent to that, which then extends pedestrian accessibility?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, anything else? Very good. Motion on the floor is for approval with stipulations, is that correct? Marcia, with stips? Okay, very good. Motion on the floor is to approve with stipulations. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. That takes us to the end of the continued public hearing consent items, and the chair would look for a motion to close the public hearing on items 74 through 133.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. We're on to the consent public hearing items, which is item 117 and 118. Is there either one of these items that need to be pulled from the consent calendar?
Move approval on both.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of item 117 and 118. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. That takes us to the end of the consent public hearing calendar. We are on to the non-consent public hearing items. This is items 119 through 133, and we'll take those up one at a time. Item 119, please.
It's a request by Ted Rufelt, Jr., Rapid City, Pennington County 911, to consider an application for fence site exception located at 940 Skyline Drive, and I move to approve with stipulations.
We have a motion and a second for approval with stipulations. Discussion on that motion. Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. Because the applicant is not my employer, I'm probably okay in not abstaining, but to avoid a appearance of conflict of interest, I'm going to abstain from this item as my employer has interest in this tower. Thank you.
Okay. I'm not sure what he said, but I think he wants to abstain. Yep. No, you're fine, Sam.
So my employer has equipment on the tower.
Oh, very good. They don't own the tower, but they have equipment on the tower.
Right.
Very good. Thank you for that clarification. Motion is for approval of stipulations. Any further discussion on that motion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by, did you have something? Whenever your city attorney's looking at you, you start to wonder. The motion on the floor is for approval. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes with Alderman Sam Quaker abstaining. Item 120, please.
It's a request by Lynn Livingston for James and Pamela Gees for an amendment to adopt the comprehensive plan to change the land use designation from office commercial with planned commercial development to general commercial with a planned commercial development located at 1020 St. Joe Street. And I move to deny without prejudice at the applicant's concurrence.
Okay, do we have a second, please? We have a motion and a second to deny without prejudice at the applicant's request. Is that the motion? Marcia, is that the correct motion? With their okay, very good. Discussion on that motion. Let's go to Alderman Bob Hurlbut.
Thank you, Mayor. If I could first just ask for Marcia's explanation of why this is being recommended to be denied and what options there may be to accommodate this applicant's request.
Let's go to Marcia Elkins, our Growth Management Director.
This property is part of parcels of land that were rezoned within the last 18 months, as I mentioned previously. There was extensive discussion and objections from the neighborhood about general commercial zoning at that time. And in fact, I believe there was a request that was withdrawn and then resubmitted as an office commercial as a compromise. It's been a short period of time, and again, that option has not been allowed to fully express itself. The concerns from the neighborhood are that these are historic buildings that will need to be reused. The Planning Commission did, when they approved this with a plan development as office commercial, indicate that they wanted to see those structures retained. That limits the number of parking spaces and other issues that have to be addressed as part of this. The applicant has indicated they'd like to use this for a antique business. He indicated at the Planning Commission meeting that he hadn't had a chance to fully explore how that might happen, how they could provide the required off-street parking and the like because of a death in his family. And he, at that time, did express concurrence with it. I think the Planning Commission's indication was denial without prejudice was they are concerned about the general commercial rezoning because of the wide range of uses that could be allowed at that site, and suggested that the applicant further explore bringing forward an actual plan development request for the site that could be reviewed and considered on its merits.
Alderman Hurlbut, you still have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. And Marcia, I just missed the last thing you were saying. I think you said that you want to reconsider a plan that will work for their needs, that is not general commercial. Is that correct?
Marcia?
No, the Planning Commission indicated they'd like to see the developer or the applicant look at a specific plan development that they would bring forward, the initial and final development plan for consideration, or some other technique to evaluate whether or not it's even feasible to put that kind of use on this site. Because of the off-street parking requirements and the physical constraints of the historic buildings in the area, there were some questions about that. And again, at the time, the applicant indicated that he had not had a chance to fully explore that, and that was the reason for the denial without prejudice, to allow him to bring that back at a future time, potentially with the plan development. At least that's my understanding of the discussion.
Okay. Alderman Hurlbut, you still have the floor, sir.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm just going to start by saying this is not just in my ward, this is directly across the street from my home. And I have talked to a lot of the same people who had concerns with the prior commercial designation request. And I think that, quite frankly, largely was a personality dispute with the prior owner. Those same people, both West Boulevard neighborhood people and historic preservation people, have voiced, I've heard nothing but positives from them, and they really want to work with the Geezys, if I'm saying that right, sir, to get this use approved. And on that basis, I think we have to continue, we have to shift the way we're looking at this from a case where the neighbors are all against it to a case where the neighbors really see that this could be a valuable addition to a deteriorating part of the neighborhood. And I'm right across the street from it, and I think it would be great to have, and I know that it would generate a little traffic, but I guess what I'd like is, I see that the recommendation is to deny without prejudice, and I would like to see it worked through the process to develop I don't know whether it's a conditional use. I don't know if neighborhood commercial would be a more limited commercial than general commercial designation that would be appropriate for this. But I'd like to see us work and find a way to make this work, because I think the neighborhood does want it, and I think the applicant is really doing a nice job with an otherwise run-down and deteriorating structure, and in fact is going to turn it into a very nice structure in the neighborhood. So I don't know that I have a problem with denying it at this point, but when it comes back, I want to see a way to try to work and make this work.
Very good.
Thanks.
Thank you. And I'm going to go to Deb Hadcock, who I apologize. I think I bumped her off the queue here, but let's go to Alderman Deb Hadcock. Did you have your?
I agree with Bob. I think this is something we need to look at. Are they allowed to go in neighborhood commercial with the planned commercial development?
Marcia?
No.
What's the uses in neighborhood commercial, Marcia?
Marcia?
Please.
page and a half that I can't recite off the top of my head, but it does not include antique stores.
Did we, can I ask you more questions? Okay. On the St. Pat area, isn't that neighborhood commercial with that secondhand store in there?
Marcia?
Off the top of my head, I believe that it's general commercial in that area. Mr. Kroger probably could correct me, but because he's representing some properties there, but I believe it's general commercial.
My issue here is it's creating a hardship. It's not like we want to change the rules in the policy, but then we're denying without prejudice for them to change it, to really tell them they can't have it there. Because even with office commercial, neighborhood commercial, what we're saying is you can't have it there. So it seems like we're going to take a business out on an antique store and give him no options. So I guess, I don't know what we can do, Marcia, but I think we should find an option. If I'm right, he doesn't want to change the structure, meaning it'll be an antique house, he'll make more improvements, it'll make it look better, but he wants to put an antique store in there. And I know he has to meet the requirements, which I know from a fact of doing it myself with a beauty shop and having to meet those requirements. But if he can meet those, I'm looking for an option that we can do to help him, because I'm not seeing one on here. Even if we deny him without prejudice, guys, he doesn't have an option. So, do you have an option or anything to do so we can help this man with his antique store, Marcia?
Let's go back to Marcia Elkins, because I think you need to probably explain
Let me
typically
try.
why we deny without prejudice. It gives them the opportunity to come back without a cost.
Correct, and maybe I wasn't clear in my previous comments. Let me restate them one more time. I believe the conversation with the Planning Commission was that they wanted to offer the applicant the opportunity to come back with the plan development, with a specific plan for the site, showing how he could comply with all the requirements like the parking, the landscaping, access, and the like, and still maintain the integrity of the historic buildings. And so my understanding of the discussion at Planning Commission was that that was the reason for the denial without prejudice. The applicant at that time indicated concurrence with that he understood he had not had a chance to work on that. And again, it was to allow him to come back through the process, potentially with the same application, with the plan development, initial and final development plan, showing exactly how he was going to develop the site so that the neighbors would have an opportunity to review it, the Planning Commission would have an opportunity to review it, and potentially it would end up back in front of you if it was potentially denied and then appealed to you. So again, there is a process in place that the Planning Commission, I believe, communicated that they'd like to see him go through to actually see if he can make that work on this site with the parking that's needed, the landscaping that's needed, the buildings in place, and bring forward a plan and allow him to develop that for further consideration.
So there's, if I'm correct, if I could, Mr.
Yep, Deb, you still have the
Mayor,
floor.
he can bring back a plan. It could be general commercial with the planned commercial development. They would agree to it if he can meet those requirements. Because on office commercial, he can't put an antique store. He can't put an antique store on neighborhood commercial. Do you guys see where I'm going? And if he comes back with a general commercial, planned commercial development, he works through all this, he takes all the time to do this, and then we say, we don't put that in those kind of districts. How does that help this man?
Let's go to Marcia.
Again, the denial without prejudice was intended to allow him to resubmit those in conjunction with initial and final development plan, so he could do that. And it was not that they did not indicate their support for that. They just did not understand how he could comply with those requirements. And this was to allow him a chance and time to do that, because he indicated to them he had not had the opportunity because at that time because of a family death.
And
so
it would be my hope that this council, if he does all this work and he finds all these things and gets this stuff done, that we had redone this to office commercial, that this happens. Because I'll tell you, it's going to cause a little bit, it's going to cause a lot of hardship and a lot of money to move this into what he wants to do and what they want him to do. So keep that in mind on this. If we would, council, when we're trying to help people, we got to kind of make a difference in certain areas when people are trying to do businesses. And I think if, like you said, the historic and the historic preservation and some of the people around there want to help this man and think he's going to do a good job, I think that makes a difference.
Okay, let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for Mr. Is it Giese?
Okay, please state your question, please.
Thank you. My question would be do you understand what's going on here? Because I I think that at one point we were, at least I was lost, so I'm assuming that you might have been too.
Well, my understanding is it's kind of, you can't do anything with this property. From my understanding, Jonathan Smith and the Growth and Management Commission, this is set up as a buffer zone between the intense use of general commercial, which is right across the street, as to oppose the residential area right behind it. These buildings were built, I believe, in 1910 or 1930.
Mr. Giese, I'm going to interrupt you because of the fact that typically during this portion of the discussion, we allow specific questions to be asked, but what we typically do not allow is for further presentation. I apologize about that, but I always try to enforce the rules fairly.
I'll address Mr. Giese. I understand the situation. I've seen the buildings there. I have to concur with Alderman Hurlbut that this area is, it's basically not really livable for residential. What you're trying to do fits, and I want to make sure that you understand that we deny this, that you're in concurrence with it, because that's what it says on here.
Right.
In that we're going to deny without prejudice. You're going to come back with some sort of a plan that says this is how we can make this work, and our growth management department's going to.
Right, but I am unsure of whether reading what it is zoned now as to what you want it to be zoned to make it work, that you're damned if you do, excuse my language, or don't. To go the leap to the general commercial, the parking in the area way exceeds what we want to do with the property.
I understand that.
Did you have
I think
another question?
Alderman Hadcock had led us to that area there, because this area truly is somewhat of a blighted area that needs some help. I think that we're, looking to help get something done over there. I'm not exactly sure. I think Marsh is moving that direction with you, but we have to go through the process. So, I mean, I think that if we can work something out that makes sense over there, that area is truly blighted. It's an eyesore. I drive by that thing 4 or 5 times.
Yeah, it's
a
one
week,
of the major material.
We appreciate what you're trying to do there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Karen Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In having listened to this lengthy discussion about this property and the concerns of the historic neighborhood, as well as the West Boulevard Association, which has a historic view outlook, the compromise was office commercial, which then provided some buffering to the adjacent neighborhoods. It probably fits in with the description of the office that's at the corner of West Boulevard and St. Joe, which I believe actually is general commercial, but operates as somewhat more in a neighborhood sense, in that it's the office of a professional office. And this was a hard decision to make, because while we certainly acknowledge the fact that something positive needs to be done with the buildings that are on St. Joe, we also looked at how do you protect the neighborhood as you move into the West Boulevard neighborhood. And I thought at the time this discussion came forward that office commercial was a positive way of doing that. I was at Planning Commission when Mr. Giese chatted a little bit about this, and I listened to the Planning Commission's concerns about this particular piece of property, and I think they did have problems with the possibility that it would go something beyond what is being more than what office commercial offers. And I do think it's important that as we talk about neighborhoods, that we do maintain their integrity. And the way in which we do that obviously has to be dealt with often in special ways, but I still believe that office commercial best fits this plan. And I would guess that Mr. Giese, when he bought this property, did understand that it was zoned office commercial, and probably had taken a look at what was a possibility within the framework. I also heard him say that this is an antique business. It's not going to generate a lot of traffic, but the suggestion of the Planning Commission was that he come back with some very specific ideas that could be presented that will allow them to continue to look at this in a way in which forwarded the intents of preserving this neighborhood. And so I would guess that the move for denial without prejudice offers the opportunity to have that conversation and have Mr. Giese look at this property in this way. And I know Mr. Hurlbut, who obviously does own property along this strip, and it's the entire half block that fronts on St. Joe that we are concerned with. And at the time, office commercial seemed to offer the best opportunity to still preserve the residential neighborhood as you move south, while still having the opportunity to in some way upgrade the structures that are here. So I would urge do I understand that the motion on the floor is for denial without prejudice?
The motion on the floor is for denial without prejudice.
And I would urge my colleagues to allow that to take place and support the motion on the floor.
And we have a number of people queued up, and I'm going to remind everybody, and that's a very good point. The motion on the floor is to deny without prejudice, and we will please try to keep your comments directed towards that motion. My understanding is this will come back through the process, and we'll have ample opportunity to discuss the merits once it comes back through the process. With that, let's go to Alderman Malcolm Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, I see the dilemma here, but I think that denying it without prejudice is probably the best solution at this point, to at least move the conversation further down the line, which would give the applicant an opportunity to come back with some sort of more detailed plan. And I think that something needs to happen in that area as well. But if we're not comfortable at least denying it without prejudice, I would recommend that we continue this item. I mean, which does the same thing, that gives you an opportunity to work with council members as well as work with staff to come back with something more detailed. I support the motion on the floor. I think it still moves the dialogue along, but we need to find some solution underneath that while that denial is in place. So I would hope that we could vote on the item pretty quickly.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Tom Johnson.
Thank you. I intend to stay as close to the motion as the rest of the speakers did. However, I will be brief.
Great.
You know, I like the proposal here, but I just want to caution, and there were some comments made, if this comes back in front of us, we must approve it. The difficulty I see in this is you're dealing with the historic preservation folks that aren't going to allow you to alter that structure. They're not going to allow you to do that. You have a limited number of square foot for parking, which there are some alternatives. And the third thing that's very difficult, and I think will excite a lot of people in West Boulevard, is that while this might be proposed as an antique store today, it could be a car wash tomorrow if they could find a council or a historic preservation folks to take that building off. I see it a good use of the land, but I see it very difficult in trying to accomplish it. Those are my brief comments, but I think it's an uphill battle to get to where you want to be.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. When the council knew in 2006, when it approved unanimously, including my support, that this would be a challenging area to access no matter what was put there. And I think that in terms of the request for an antique store, we can see how the process goes, but I think we ought to take a look at the definitions also of office commercial, or perhaps even a neighborhood commercial zoning designation, which is much less threatening, and see if the definitions of a neighborhood commercial zoning can be changed to allow antique stores. There is an antique store across the way as well. I'm not sure what the zoning is there, but I would ask that we, instead of saying no and asking the applicant to figure it out, that we find ways to help develop this property, which is sitting there and not really benefiting anyone. So I would just ask that be considered. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Bob Hurlbut for the second time.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll be brief. I just want to say, and I think Alderman Koiker's suggestion is a good one, perhaps. I think clearly where there's a will, there's a way, and I think there's at least a will to consider it on this council. And in my case, and having talked to historic preservation people and West Boulevard people, and not heard one person that has a problem with this project, you know, I want to try to move it forward and find a way that it can be done in a workable fashion, whether that's some sort of conditional use permit, some sort of restructured zoning, whatever it takes. I want to be able to consider it, and that's enough said at that point. And I also want to just remind the applicant that I am happy to talk to you and help you with this. So feel free to call me. Thanks.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Deb Hadcock.
I appreciate my colleagues wanting to make a difference on this, and that's what we try to do up here is try to find how we can help people. And Sam, I think that was a good idea. Mr. Hurlbut was talking about that as well. Sometimes we seem to do that for general commercial and the bigger companies. Sometimes we have to change the uses and mix things around in order to get things done. So sometimes we should do it for the little guy as well. Just one comment though. It's funny, on major arterials, depending on what side we're on, that's what we're basing it on. And some people say no, but when we came in and we redid Haynes Avenue and we put some commercial right next to residential, and they told you they had their backs to it and they had everything else, that was in Ward 4, nobody changed that. In fact, you put a furniture store right in the backs of everybody else. You're on arterial, and I've lived on 5th Street before, for 20 years, and I knew on a major arterial that I was going to have general commercial, and they kept bringing it in. Don't gavel me. But long story short, guys, if you live by major arterials, what do you expect is going to be on those? So let's use some common sense here when we're doing things on some of this stuff. Be careful what you're wishing for, and you got to be fair to everybody.
Very good. Thank you. Motion on the floor is for denial without prejudice with the applicant's concurrence. Let's make sure we get that right. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone, for the discussion. We're on to item 121, please.
So, request by Spurlick Consulting for Double L Properties for an amendment to adopt a comprehensive plan to change the land use designation from low density residential to neighborhood commercial on located at 2935 Sheridan Lake Road. And it comes to us with the recommendation to die without prejudice.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to deny this without prejudice. Discussion on that motion. Alderman Karen Olson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Approaching this particular issue, I think it's important to remember that this is a residential neighborhood. And while I can appreciate the Loggies as builders and as good citizens and having a good track record in our community, this is spot zoning. I mean, this is a small lot surrounded on 3 sides by residential. And the notion that we should change this is, I think, a disservice to the neighborhood. Some of the speakers who talked about this issue have lived at this neighborhood, in this neighborhood, a long time. Dev was just referencing a major arterial. It's not the fault of the people who live along Sheridan Lake Road that this has become a major street. It's not their fault. It is the development that as we go south that has required a larger street to take place along this particular route. And I don't think that the neighborhood should have to suffer because there's been development to the south, extensive development to the south. They acknowledge the fact that there is a small piece of commercial in this particular, but it is on the east side of the road, and it serves the neighborhood in various ways. I would guess that some of the people who live along this road probably even remember when it was a gravel road. So the important thing is, I think when what we're talking about is the value of this neighborhood, both financially and in terms of quality of life. As I listen to the various speakers, they really do they bought their homes with the idea that this would be residential. And one of the values of zoning is it says to neighbors, we respect your decision, the most major decision most families make in terms of the life decision, which is the purchasing of a home. And they made that assumption based on the fact that Rapid City, with real integrity, had identified this as residential. And the idea that now we want to change that, no matter how well-intentioned this is, it doesn't serve the long-term needs of this neighborhood for quiet, non-intrusiveness. And so while I can understand the difficulties presented by this particular site, I know it was cited as having previously been a business, but that's years ago, and it was a home office. And and it's always remained as low-density residential. So I think in the interests of this neighborhood, that it should remain residential. And all along Sheridan Lake Road, from the corner of Sheridan Lake Road and Jackson Boulevard, all the way to Corral Drive, that is all residential. And I think we do a disservice to our citizens if we change something that dramatically affects both the quality of life and the financial integrity of one of their largest investments. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Sam Quaker.
Thank you, Mayor. Certainly a case can be made that changing this zoning designation to commercial might be spot zoning, but it would be much more difficult to make the case that changing the zoning designation to medium density residential would be spot zoning. So the point that I'm making here is I think the council needs to be careful about what it wishes for. That if we say no to this, that there is a very real risk of a rezoning designation or request coming through to turn this into medium density residential. You'll have very large apartments there with traffic 24 hours a day. But I do think that without a planned commercial development, without a planned development designation, this is much harder to support. So I do support denial without prejudice of this item at this time, and I would suggest the consideration of a planned commercial development to make this to make this more palatable and to address some of the issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Deb Hadcock.
Actually, Sam, that's a good idea. I think in this case for office commercial, change of land use from office to commercial to planned commercial development with a general commercial with a planned commercial development. I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong one. Amendment to the adopted comprehensive changes. Okay, sorry. Low density to neighborhood commercial with a planned commercial development. I had it down and then I messed it up. Sorry. Is a good idea because then it can fit the needs of the neighbors. We can do a little bit more on what we need to do to make that more neighborhood friendly, even more. Again, I think the plan is good. The Loggies have done and been fair to people in the past. I know from their building they have done what they said and been good neighbors to people. And I do base it on that because if in the past, if they treated people right, they will work with the neighborhood and try to do the best at this, what they're trying to do. Again, this is our arterial. This wasn't put into place last week, 2 years ago, or 10 years ago. This arterial was put into place a long time ago. So telling people that's not your fault that you moved next to our arterial, it's a busy street. It was a busy street before. It'll be, even if they widen it, it was still busy before. You knew it was going to be a busy street. Do I want a quiet neighborhood? Do I want these people to be treated right? I do. But I think neighborhood commercial, in Sam's case with the planned commercial development, is a good idea. They'll be treated right. This area is made for that. There is general commercial, many areas in there, and I think these people can be satisfied with what the Loggies or the people that are trying to make a difference on this. We are business friendly as well as neighborhood friendly, and we try to make both find the solution. I think that is. Can I make a substitute, or do we have to send them back, deny without prejudice, and send them back to make it a planned commercial development?
You have the ability to offer a substitute motion.
Can I ask them if they're in favor of that? Marcia?
Let's go to Marcia Elkins real quick.
Yes, you would need to deny this request, and you could then encourage the applicant to bring it back to amend the comp plan to have the neighborhood commercial with a planned development designation and ask them to bring that forward. And if I might go beyond that, Mayor, the discussion on this before the Planning Commission was very similar to the item with Geese's, in that some of the Planning Commission members specifically talked about the fact that they'd like to have the applicant bring forward a specific plan for the property as an initial development plan with their resubmittal, and that was the reason for the denial without prejudice.
And if I'm correct, isn't that on the second part, not the first, on the rezoning?
No,
it addresses plan.
It addresses both 121, which would have to be re-advertised, and new notices sent.
Which would be the planned commercial development, not the pictures and what they need to do on that land. That would be the second part on 133, am I correct?
Marcia?
Actually, all three applications would need to come forward, was what the suggestion of the Planning Commission was.
Okay.
And their suggestion was to do them all at the same time.
So, Marcia, your recommendation, if the council so desires, if they're looking to give direction to come back, basically with a PCD, the appropriate motion would actually go ahead, deny this without prejudice, allow them to come back through the process at no cost.
Correct, and that was the essence of the discussion at Planning Commission.
And if I could, Mayor Hanks, I would like to ask the applicant if they'd be willing to do that. And I know it's putting them on the spot, but it also
Kale,
gives a solution.
You understand the question?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I believe that we'd certainly be interested in coming back through doing the PD overlay. As you know, the initial final plan development that we'd be looking for is going to require architectural plans and civil plans for it, which are fairly expensive.
So I would make that motion, if I could, to bring this back, deny without prejudice, so they can bring this back and change the designation on this.
That is the motion on the floor. So the original motion was to deny without prejudice. That is the.
Okay.
So
sorry.
Okay. Very good.
Thank you.
Let's go to Marcia Elkins.
If I might, Kale said something very important, and I'm afraid it may have slipped through the conversation. The discussion at the Planning Commission was they wanted to see at least an initial development plan that showed what the buildings would look like, what the uses would be, what the layout would be, where the buffering would be, where the landscaping would be, where the access would be, and the like. And that was the discussion there. What Kale suggested was just an overlay, which does not provide that information. And I think there needs to probably be some discussion about that point, because those are two dramatically different approaches to this in terms of the expense to the applicant and the amount of information that's available to both the Planning Commission, City Council, and ultimately the neighbors.
Well, I would hope that that motion, when they discuss it with you, Marcia, that they, at this point, I'm pretty sure they know what we need in order to get this to make it right. So if he comes with the overlay, he knows that he's probably not going to get anything done, because he's not going to find solution with the neighbors that way. Or
Okay. Let's go to Alderman Ron Kroger.
Thank you, Mayor. It's probably a moot point right now, but I don't think we truly had a motion on the floor, because Alderman LaCroix basically read the Planning Commission recommendation, and Alderman Olson seconded it, and he didn't say that he was making the motion. He just stated that it was a Planning Commission recommendation. So I guess I don't think we have a motion on the floor, but nonetheless, I know we will have her very shortly, but I just want to comment that Marcia's highlighted basically what took place at Planning Commission, and most of the Planning Commission members were supportive of the project, but they had some major concerns that when the Loggies were to exit this property at some point in time, what would happen to it and who would move into it. So that's why the discussion of planned commercial development took place. So this council or the council that was in place at that point in time could look at it again and make sure what was going to go back in there would be appropriate to the neighborhood. So I guess I would make a motion. I don't believe we have a motion on the floor, and I'd just say I would move that.
Why don't we do it this way?
Okay.
Let me ask the motion maker of his intent. Was your intent to actually move this per the recommendations of the Planning Commission, which was to deny without prejudice? Okay. We'll assume that
Okay.
that was it, and
Fine.
the seconder made the motion, so, but thank you
I
for
can
the
support
point.
that motion.
Very good. Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Tom Johnson.
I guess I disagree with the motion, and just from this standpoint, I believe you don't have to deny it to send it back to the process. I think you could send it back to the Planning Commission and recommend that the change come with the overlay on it. I don't think you have to start the whole process over. That's my opinion. I think you're just stopping it and restarting it, which makes no sense to me whatsoever. I think that the plan is reasonable. However, I think there are safeguards that need to be in place for the neighborhood to feel safe. I think you need to have a certain amount of buffering. You need to have some landscape. We need to talk about exactly what this facility will hold, whether it's going to hold one business, 3 businesses, and all those things can be done with the overlay on it. And probably you have to spend the money to let the residents know and let the council know exactly what your intentions are. But I don't believe that you have to deny this without prejudice. I think you can just send it back and send it back to Planning Commission and recommend that there be a planned overlay attached to it. So we'd like to deny things just to start them all over because it's just easy and we can't think beyond what happens in the next 5 minutes. But I think it can be done in an easier fashion. And those are my comments. So I'll vote against it, and it's okay if it starts over. But I will say with the proper safeguards for the neighborhood, I think that this this location, I think, is okay for the neighborhood commercial with certain safeguards that the council can live with. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Malcolm Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to chide Tom a little bit, thinking beyond the next 5 minutes. I think it does have to go back through the process because we're changing, we're changing what they're going to come forward with. I think we're not listening to what Marcia said. Marcia said that Cale used the language of overlay. I don't know if overlay then gives us what truly will be there. So, I think that's not providing safeguards for the neighborhood. I don't think I'm opposed to what I've seen, but there's no guarantee that what we've seen here conceptually is what's going to actually end up on that property. So I have some concerns with that. But I also realize that this goes to great expense for the applicant, and then to come back through the process, and then we say, well, I'm sorry, that doesn't do it. That goes to some great expense. I support the denial motion that's on the floor. I think that in the interim, that there needs to be some discussion about what this is going to look like before you go forward and start spending a lot of money to come up with some hard plans in terms of what that could potentially look like. But I support the denial motion, or we can continue it, and then those discussions can take place as well. But I think they both do the same thing. Those are my comments.
Thank you. Let's go to Alderman Karen Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't speak to this. In the discussion, if my understanding is for denial, I'm going to support that, and then that gives me another chance to talk about the potential for this piece of property in the neighborhood. So I will just say that I support the motion on the floor, and I think it's important for my colleagues, if you care about neighborhoods, to support the motion on the floor.
Okay, let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would say I would support the motion, but I want the applicant also to understand that it would take me some heavy influence to make sure that we're changing these people's neighborhood. And when they bought their houses there, they expected it to be residential neighborhoods. I want to make sure that the respect for the integrity of their neighborhood is considered. I think that looking at some of the pictures that you've given us, would probably fit in that neighborhood. when the people bought their homes there, they didn't expect to have it commercially planned in that neighborhood. I look at the fact that if someone was to build a commercial building across the street from my house or any one of your houses or even the applicants' houses, I think that there'd be a lot of consideration that has to be given to these people, these folks that have come in here tonight, the folks that their properties will be abutting the commercial property. I know we talk about planned overlays and those types of things. I think that a planned development may be acceptable, but there's no guarantee. So I just want to make sure that the applicant understands there's no guarantee that this or any other council is going to approve something just because they bring it forward. I think that there's some huge considerations that have to be given to those neighbors, those people that live in that neighborhood as they move forward. I don't think they bought their houses with anticipation of it being zoned commercial next to them. I think that the house that is being torn down, though it may be in a dilapidated for that neighborhood, is not totally dilapidated and could be maybe renovated, or another house could be built there or anything of the such. I'm hoping that if this does move forward, that the applicants will work with the neighbors in that neighborhood to get something that will work for them also. I mean, they are there. They've invested in their communities. That is their house, probably one of the biggest assets that those people will own. And I want that to be a major consideration if this comes forward again. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further lights, the motion on the floor is to deny without prejudice. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion passes with 1 no from Alderman Tom Johnson. Thank you, everyone. We're on to item 122, please.
Authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign a waiver of right to protest for future assessment for the installation of water and sewer along 3rd Street and Rapid Street as they abut Dan's Supermarket Tract revised, located at 33 Omaha Street. I'd move to approve.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item 123, please.
A request by TSP for Bob Brandt for a variance to the subdivision regulation to reduce the width of the access easement from 59 feet to 26 feet, to waive the requirement to provide a minimum 8-foot wide drainage and utility easement, and waive the requirement to install curb gutter sidewalks, street light conduit, water and sewer as per chapter 16.16 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, located at 333 Omaha Street, and I'd move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Was you said for approval?
Yeah.
My understanding is that the recommendation was to approve in part and deny in part. Is that correct, Marcia?
Correct, in accordance with the Planning Commission's recommendation.
Okay.
That'd be my motion.
Okay. Is that all
Thank
right with
you.
the seconder? Very good. Everyone clear on the motion? The motion on the floor is for approval in part and denial in part, based per the recommendations of the Planning Commission. Any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, come on. Opposed? Okay. We are on to item 124 now.
Yeah.
We just approved 123. We just approved 123. If you wish to talk about it, we would have to take that up as for a motion to reconsider 123.
I'm just saying, it says 123 approval on here, now we just got a different.
Yeah.
No. Okay. We're going to back up. The motion on the floor, and Marcia clarified that, was Lloyd made, the original motion was to approve, and I asked Marcia for clarification.
His motion was the planning commission recommendation.
Yes. Yes. Which basically means it was, right, approve in part and deny in part per the recommendations from the Planning Commission. That was the motion that we voted on. Everyone clear on that?
No, because that says approval on our thing and it doesn't say any of that.
By saying planning commission recommendation, it came out correct.
Yes. Yes. Marcia, that was the correct motion, correct?
For SB 042, for Mr. Brandt, yes, that is
Yes.
the correct recommendation.
Okay, very good. We're moving on.
I may have contributed the confusion, I got some.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, on to item 124.
Okay. Is a request by Spurlick Consulting for James Lettner for variance to the subdivision regulation to waive the requirements to dedicate the 10 additional feet of right-of-way and provide a planting screen easement along East St. Patrick Street to waive the requirement to install pavement, curb, gutter, sidewalk, street light along Creek Drive, and install sidewalk along south side of East St. Charles Street as per Chapter 16 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. And this is located northwest corner of the intersection of Creek Drive and East St. Patrick Drive. And this would be to approve. I'd move to approve in part with stipulations and deny in part as recommended by the Planning Commission.
Second.
Okay.
At the applicant's concurrence.
Okay. That's not the motion I have, but we will recognize the motion on the floor is to approve per the Planning Commission's recommendation. Let's go to Marcia Elkins.
I apologize. When I was making your cheat sheet tonight, I got off one on these. The recommendation that is attached online, which is the Planning Commission's recommendation, is to acknowledge the applicant's withdrawal of this request. So we would ask that you approve a motion to acknowledge the applicant's withdrawal of 07 SV 050.
Okay, we have a substitute motion to acknowledge, to withdraw this at the applicant's request. Discussion on that motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 125.
To authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign the waiver of right to protest future assessment for the installation of curb, gutter, street, light, conduit, additional pavement, additional extension of water and sewer main as it abuts a portion being located at the point located at 4280 South Highway 79. I'd move for approval.
Second.
Very good. We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 126, please.
126 is a request by Fisk Land Surveying and Consulting Engineering for Pacific Steel and Recycling for a variance to the subdivision regulations to waive the requirements to install curb, gutter, street, light, conduit, additional pavement, or additional extension of the water sewer main in any adjoining right-of-way, and the requirement to a dedicated additional right-of-way located at 4280 South Highway 79. And I would move to deny in part and approve in part with stipulations as recommended by the Planning Commission.
Second.
Very good. We have a motion and a second to deny in part and approve in part per the recommendations of the Planning Commission. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. 127, please.
Is there a request by Arleth and Associates for a variance to subdivision regulations to reduce the right-of-way width west of Kansas City Street from 59 feet to 55 feet and reduce the right-of-way width along Jackson Boulevard from 100 feet to 65 feet per Chapter 16.16 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, located at 719 Jackson Boulevard, and approve in part and deny in part as recommended by the Planning Commission.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval in part and denial in part per the recommendations of the Planning Commission. Discussion. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 128, please.
There's a request by Renner Associates for Pete Lean and Sons and a variance for subdivision regulations to waive the requirements to install curb, gutter, sidewalk, street, light, conduit, water, sewer, and additional pavement along Sturgis Road as per Chapter 16.16 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. And this is located west of Sturgis Road and north of Universal Drive. And I move to deny without prejudice at the applicant's request.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to deny without prejudice at the applicant's request. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 129, please.
It's a request by FMG for Jackson Park LLC for a variance to the subdivision regulations to waive the requirements to construct pavement, curbs, gutter, water, sewer, sidewalk, and street light conduit along the access easement as per Chapter 16.16 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. And this is located northwest of the intersection of Jackson Boulevard and Central Boulevard. I move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 130, please.
There's a request by Spurlick Consulting Company for Darwin Vanden Hook for a variance to subdivision regulations to waive the requirements to install sidewalk and to reduce the pavement width and right-of-way width as per chapter 16.16 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. And this is located northwest of the intersection of Anna Court and Arena Drive. I move to approve with stipulations.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval with stipulations. Any discussion on that motion? Any session? Alderman Karen Olson.
In looking at where this is, Marcia, is this residential?
Marcia?
Yes, this is part of the Hart Ranch development.
Don't they have sidewalks in there?
No, the sidewalks were previously waived by the council, and they put in a pathway on the backside throughout the development. And this recommendation is consistent with what's been done with the other lots when they were platted.
Okay. Any additional questions, Karen? Now let's go to Alderman Ron Weifenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for Marcia, and my question would be, we seem to waive a lot of sidewalks. Who pays for that sidewalk when the city wants to get it put in 10 or 15 years or 20 years?
Marcia?
The city has the right on sidewalks to order those in and assess those back to the property owner in the future. It is one area, there's a couple others, but one area where the underlying property owners cannot object to the assessment. So ultimately, a future property owner could.
It seems like a common practice for us just to waive a sidewalk requirement. And then we run into issues like, you know, we leave it open for our council 20 years from now to have to face the 30 people out in the...
Marcia?
In the last 2 years, because of some of the comments from council members, we've taken a closer look at this. This is a project, and specifically that there was a lot of discussion, a lot of input from the residences in the area, and they chose to use the pathway along the golf course as an alternative. I think that was over the objections of the staff, but that was your decision. We do take a lot closer look at it. We had a meeting with the developer this morning where we specifically said they needed to provide it on both sides of the street or do it on one side of the street with a bike path pedestrian access through the development on the other side. So we're taking a closer look at this. I think 3 years ago you would have seen more of these just blanketly be waived. Sometimes when they appear on your agenda, when we're saying we're waiving sidewalks, one of the stipulations is that they put it on one side. So again, I've promised a couple of the commissioners to make them aware if I thought it was not consistent with what their comments have been in terms of trying to provide sidewalks through developments.
Okay.
I believe that in the society, in the community that we're in, and waiving the sidewalks for the future is not a great idea. So I just wanted to express that concern.
We'll keep working on that.
Thanks,
Very
Marcia.
good. We are on item 130. Item 130. The motion on the floor is to approve with stipulations. Everyone clear on that motion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 131, please.
It's a request by the City of Rapid City for variance subdivision regulations to waive the requirements to dedicate right-of-way, to waive the requirements to install curb, gutter, sidewalk, street light, conduit, sewer, water, and pavement, and to waive the requirement that each lot shall be provided with access from a public street as per chapter 16.16 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. And this is located adjacent to the west side of Skyline Drive and north of Dinosaur Park. And I move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval. Discussion on that motion. Karen, did you have your light on this
Yes,
one?
I did.
Okay. Let's go to Alderman Karen Olson.
So this would put no sidewalks along either side of Skyline, and we will. And is there a warp associated with this proposal?
Okay. Let's go to Marcia Elkins.
We spent some time this morning reviewing the tapes of Planning Commission. Planning Commission chose to waive the requirements completely. So you are correct. Along Skyline Drive, just above Dr. Schalbauer's house, you continue up, and before you get to Dinosaur Park, there would not be any sidewalk along Skyline Drive itself.
And my best recollection is there's no sidewalks beyond Quincy Street as you go up Skyline. Am I correct in
That's
assuming that?
correct. There is sidewalk along the Dinosaur Park steps.
Oh, right, okay. But that would
Directly
be the
adjacent to
only-
it, but that's the only piece I'm aware of in that area.
We are proposing moving this, I mean, this would obviously be something that would be a part of our designation for scenic byway. And so there will be further discussion about what happens along this street as that proposal moves forward. Am I correct in thinking that?
I believe that it will be part of that discussion. I also would mention the fact that one of the reasons that there's interest in acquiring this land is the fact that there's a dinosaur here and we need to provide ADA accessible access back up to the dinosaurs. So there may well be some kind of internal pedestrian pathway that may not be directly adjacent to the road itself, but that would provide pedestrian access in the vicinity. And I think the Parks Department really wants to look at that. There's work being done by Public Works on a potential analysis and work on the Skyline Drive area, and I think the pedestrian access is one of the issues that we'll be talking about as a staff as we bring recommendations forward to you with the development of the plan.
Thank you. I mean, I'll support this, but I do have, I mean, I have shared Ron's concerns that we are building, we're talking about having a healthier community. One of the ways it happens is by people walking, and yet we don't make it very, well, it isn't we don't make it very, we actually make it hard to walk around in our community.
Let's go to Jason Green, our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to remind the council this is land that's to be acquired by the city. This is the last step in the process before closing. Earlier on tonight's agenda was the preliminary plat approval, and I think Mr. Preston will have an item to add to your bill list tonight also.
Okay, very good. Motion on the floor is for approval. Any further discussion? Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 132, please.
132 is the second reading of ordinance number 5354, an ordinance amending section 1706 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by Lynn Livingston for Pamela and James Giese for a rezoning from office commercial district to general commercial district located at 1021 St. Joseph Street, and this is to deny without prejudice with the applicant's concurrence.
We have a motion and a second to deny without prejudice with the applicant's concurrence. Any discussion on that motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item 133, please.
Second, number 133 is the second reading of ordinance number 5359, an ordinance amending section 1706 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, rezoning the within described property as requested by Spurlick Consulting Incorporated for Double L Properties for a rezoning from low density residential district to neighborhood commercial district located at 2935 Sheridan Lake Road. And again, we deny without prejudice.
Do we have a motion and a second to deny without prejudice? Any discussion on that motion? Let's go to Alderman Tom Johnson.
Again, I'm not certain why we would not continue this. You could continue the second reading again and again and again and wait for that to come back to the process. Why you would start the process over, require the posting and notification, I'm not sure. You can still do the same thing, so I'm going to vote against this. And if there's any support, I would certainly recommend somebody to continue it, but I'll let the council decide.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion passes with 1 no from Alderman Tom Johnson. We're on to the bill list. Item 134, Mr. Jim Preston, City Finance Officer.
Thank you, Mayor. The council, the bill list that you have totals $9,182,485.56. I would like to add one item, that's Dan and Lori Smith for Skyline acquisition in the total of $110,000. And as part of the motion, I'd like to receive permission to issue a treasurer's check in that amount, 110. And
so what's the new total,
so that
please?
would make a new total of $9,292,485.56.
Okay, and this, Jason, do you have something you need to add?
Yes, the authorization on the treasurer's check for Dan and Lori Smith, I would like that to also include and/or the appropriate title company.
Okay. Do we have a motion, please?
So moved.
Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second for approval of the bill list, which now totals $9,292,485.56 and includes the authorization to issue a cashier's check, treasurer's check to either the Smiths or the title company. Everyone clear on that motion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We are on to executive session. Jason, do you have any items?
Yes, we do, and I would appreciate if the motion maker would include as a part of the motion that the purpose is those permitted by SDCL 1-25-2.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second to go into executive session as permitted under SDCL 1-25-2. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We are in executive session. Chair, look for motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you.